March 17, 2021, 6:30 p.m. via Zoom. Tonight, the invocation is by the Reverend Betty Stapleford.
I'll share with you now some words that have inspired me by Reverend Kendall Gibbons. Out of our community of diverse heritage and belief, we come together to share our hope and to create good in the world. The prophets of all traditions and times have taught that we are called to mercy, generosity, and mutual care. And that is to be great, is to serve. We know there can be no enduring happiness for humanity as long as suffering and want go unrelieved. Until all may be sheltered, none of us is truly at home. May the power of our various ideas and beliefs sustain us in this work, that we may be the hands of creativity and justice, and together build a better world. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Stapleford. The flag salute. Councilmember Reiser, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
You could stand and proceed after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Reiser. Madam Clerk, would you please do a roll call?
Councilmember Ariza?
Here.
Councilmember Sabel?
Here.
Councilmember Cornell?
Here.
Vice Mayor Crosswhite? I see you there, Ms.
Not unmute. I'm here.
Thank you. Mayor Juarez?
Here.
All present. Thank you.
Thank you. Presentations, Public Works Director Quarterly Report. I believe that's Cleet Saunier.
Good evening, Mayor Mayor Juarez and City Council members. My name is Cleet Saunier. I'm the Public Works Director for the City of Santa Paula, and I'm presenting to you our fourth quarter report. If everybody can see the shared screen, I have presented on mine. Is that visible?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So the fourth quarter of 2020, that would be the months of October through December of last year. Unfortunately, some of the stuff that I'm going to be presenting will reflect back on that quarter, yet some of the items have already been completed and that we're reporting in arrears. First up is our Streets Division. Our Streets Division, of course, provides the operation and maintenance of all of our roads and pedestrian facilities along the road rights of way and traffic control. This past quarter, on the fourth quarter of 2020, we swept 663 curb miles of streets, and that is part of our MPDES permit requirements. Our potholes that our streets crew repaired over 142 using about 23 tons of asphalt, and that is with our new paving trailer, which you see in the background picture. We removed 62 homeless camps and illegal dump sites throughout the city. And of course, ongoing maintenance of storm drains and ditches, although there's been limited need for that with the limited amount of rain we've gotten so far, unfortunately. We had 385 underground service alerts. Whenever anybody digs under the ground, we need to go out and locate our utilities. We trimmed and removed 23 trees. Of course, we had the large windstorm that contributed somewhat to it back then, and even more so more recently. And in the Main Street MOT, we're continuing to provide outdoor dining, safety barricades, and K-rails to make sure traffic goes through safely. And we also had staff assist with the Mayans filming that recently took place. Our fleet division, of course, provides maintenance and repair services for all of the vehicles, the rolling stock, the trailers, the generator trailers, et cetera, throughout the city. This past quarter, fourth quarter of 2020, they addressed over 200 inspection, repair, and maintenance service orders on 123 units. And there's a breakdown. You can see that police is typically, they have the most wear and tear on their vehicles, and just by what they do on a daily basis. And so that took up a bulk, followed closely behind with Public Works. Our wastewater division, of course, that includes the water recycling facility out off Peck Road and Cal Pipe Road and south side of 126. And then, of course, the waste collection system that runs throughout the city, collecting all of that waste and bringing it to that plant. We received 242 million gallons of wastewater influent. We discharged 171 million gallons of that treated influent into our percolation ponds out by the water recycling facility. We also discharged 5 million gallons of reused water, which is used in the processing of treating that effluent. And then through that effluent process, we culled out 837 tons of biosolids, or the more common vernacular sludge. And we had an average effluent chloride concentration of 117.3 milligrams per liter. That's been running very well for us. We've been starting to adjust our controls out the plant, and we're seeing a good steady reduction in the chloride concentration coming out of the plant into the groundwater table, which in this next one shows that we've been running fairly solidly around the mid 120s in our chloride concentration to the groundwater, which, as most of you know, is one of the reasons why we're on a cease and desist order, and we are currently in the process of building an advanced water treatment facility to reduce those chlorides even down below 110. I would note that I did not include in this particular report, based on council's direction, we are working on a transition from Veolia as our contract operator at the water recycling facility to the Ventura Regional Sanitation District. We have that agreement scheduled for the April 7th council meeting agenda, and just in time for Veolia's contract to expire on April 16th, with April 17th being the start date of VRSD. We've been working very well with their staff, and it looks like we're going to have an agreement finalized fairly soon for them to take to their council and then bring to you as the city council for ratification at the April 7th meeting. Our water division, of course, all the potable water systems throughout the city, the water treatment, or the treatment facility and production plant at Steckel Road, and also the one out on Lemonwood, provided all the potable water within our system. We had over 350 million gallons of potable water produced this past quarter. We also our staff repaired 53 main and service line leaks. I would note that that is a significant reduction in what we've had in the past. I think that some of the improvement projects we've undertaken have contributed greatly to that, and also having a more focused repair process out in the field, so that we're not having to go back and re-repair as much as they used to have to do. We conducted over 23,000 meter readings, addressed 165 water service requests. That's new and discontinued water services that folks request as they move in and out of the community. We had 899 meter notice tags. I would note that in the report, that is a significantly high number, but it reflects the notices, door hangers essentially, that we put on residences in which there is a known delinquency in their water bill payments. But at no time have we done any lock-offs of any water service per the council's direction and state law as it stands today. And of course, we have our ongoing installation of new cellular meters, which will make the 23,000 to 24,000 meter readings we've been doing over a 3-month period much easier, more centralized location, and a lot more data usable and data friendly, so that folks can look up their own bills and find out what they're being charged and how much consumption they're getting. We hope to have that up and running very soon in the near future. on a bigger scale, I should say. And then we have solid waste services. Our trash hauler is Athens Services. They continue to provide our solid waste collection service and recycling services and diversion of those recycled services to proper facilities for processing. As far as solid waste, we served over 5,800 customers, and we collected they collected 4,600 tons of trash. Recycling waste, we have just slightly fewer folks that are signed up for recycling at 5,528, and the waste diverted is around 2,450 tons. And as I'd mentioned in our study session earlier, we're going to be coming to you in another study session. We're projecting that to be the second meeting in May, or first meeting in May, I should say. And we hope to present to you some options as to how to proceed with either a formal long-term franchise agreement with Athens Services, or present enough background information to help you decide whether or not to initiate an RFP process to solicit bids from other qualified waste collection and recycling haulers, including Athens, of course, would be invited to bid on that. I would note that Athens was just awarded the Thousand Oaks contract. It was quite a large contract. They essentially have some really interesting things in their franchise agreement that staff and Public Works is evaluating and putting into this study session that we'll present to you in terms of what you may want to consider as part of the new agreement, whether it's with Athens or an RFP process. As I mentioned, the action plan study session is scheduled for May. We have our capital improvement program. Our first off is our street improvement projects. Our citywide street maintenance program does continue. We had a phase 2. The only reason that we're putting this up here, we essentially completed all that last summer, but we had some striping and some finalized markings, pavement markings that had to be done. We completed those in November, so that project is completed. That finished up about 17 miles of roadways that were improved last year. Peck Road, Faulkner Road project, we had originally scheduled that for completion around December, but due to the wet season coming up, November, but due to the wet season coming up, we opted to delay that so that we're going to be finishing it up here in May. Work has already started out there, and it's about $447,000. That's going to be 3 intersections, basically there at the Faulkner Road exit off of the 126. That'll be a significant improvement there, as well as a couple of more intersections up Peck Road, north side of Harvard. And then, of course, Palmport Paving, water and sewer improvement project. We had $1.4 million budgeted. We came in significantly under that. And that was a project where, again, I'm reporting in arrears. So this is through December. We actually finished that project up in February. I encourage everyone to take a drive out there and look at it. It's a very good job. I think we did some really good work out there through Toro, the contractor, and most of the residents, all the residents are extremely happy, I think, with the outcome of that, including our school district there at the high school. And then the big one, some of you have been curious about why you perhaps haven't seen too many paving projects right now, but we've been doing a lot of planning and designing. One of those planning and designing operations is involving Harvard Boulevard. We're moving forward. We should have 90%, 95% completed construction drawings in April next month, in which we'll be able to look at that and get a little bit more refined cost estimate of what it's going to take to complete that job. But that is a 1.7 mile project, and it will run from Peck Road all the way to where we finished off at 10th Avenue. But we're going to be replacing about 6,000 feet of water line and about equal amount of sewer line, 30-inch sewer, and about, I think it was a 20-inch water main. That full length, plus all of that paving from curb to curb being replaced with new. I think it'll be a terrific impact on this community. I think everybody's going to be very appreciative of the outcome of it. It'll be some difficulty for a little while for folks driving through there. We're going to have a lot of maintenance of traffic. Most of the sewer work we anticipate starting this summer. That will probably continue on through the winter, and paving potentially starting about this time, maybe April of next year. And then we have our citywide sidewalk improvement program. We had 11 locations, including some park locations. I'm not sure which parks, but I do know we had some sidewalk improvements that were needed in some of the parks. That was completed in March, and you'll probably hear about it again at my next report for the first quarter of this year. And then this, again, this is just the pavement management program showing you most of the streets that have been completed already, and those were completed there in November. So that's one of the reasons why it's included in this report. Utility improvement program, we've got the Mesa Tanks Replacement Project. That is about a $3 million project. We're going to replace both of the existing steel tanks up on the hill there at the top of the hill above our city here. And that project is already in design, started design last summer in August, and we hope to have something starting in construction within the next few months. And then the Biofilter Odor Control Project that's associated with our hydrogen sulfide gas removal process out at the water recycling facility. That is scheduled, we started construction or started awarded contract in January, and we're looking to have that finished up by this September in compliance with the variances that we're currently operating under through the Ventura County Air Pollution Control District. And then we have the WRF Instrumentation and Controls Project. That was about $421,000. That came under budget. That was completed in January, and there's several upgrades. I listed those in the staff report presented to you in your packet. We have a lot of safety precautions that we addressed, a lot of licensing that was updated and upgraded with new software. A lot of redundancy in the system in which we'll be able to control the potential of any future spills at that plant. And then we have the membrane replacement project, $1.85 million. We received bids that were significantly less than that from Koch. They are already actively involved in getting those membranes installed at the water recycling facility. Should have those completed by May. And then, of course, the big one, the Advanced Water Treatment System project. That's a $15 million project, and we're going to be completing that still on schedule December 2023. We have our application in for the SRF State Revolving Fund loan through the State Water Board, and also anticipate getting some news on that at the earliest by July. We'll be coming back to the council for approval of the loan documents pending approval and the terms. And with that, concludes my report. Oh, I did want to mention one thing, just so that you know we have not forgotten. We are actively pursuing some energy efficiency improvements throughout the city. Those include upgrades to the existing systems that are in place, the HVAC system, lighting systems within our buildings. But we're also working diligently toward getting a solar vendor on board to be able to evaluate the city and identify and estimate what those costs will be. We'll be including that in our 5-year capital plan that you'll be looking at in the budget approval process in the coming months. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Saunier. Council members, any questions of our Public Works Director?
Mayor?
Go ahead, Vice Mayor.
Yeah, just one thing. Did we by any chance, were we able to locate any sort of grant funding or other kinds of funding for our advanced treatment facility at the WRF?
Our consultants at MKN have pursued as many opportunities as they have. Unfortunately, there just has not been that many opportunities for funding, although I understand that the legislators in Washington, D.C. are very eager to give us a lot of money here in the coming days that we may be able to use for water and sewer projects. I'm fairly confident that Mr. Singer will probably touch base on that. But certainly, if if that's a qualifying project, we certainly want to look at that. Absolutely.
Go ahead, Councilmember Sobel.
Thank you, Mary. Thanks for the report, Clete, and great news on the leaks. Has been definitely a concern through the years. So I really like that there's progress on that. I think that matters a lot. Just one question. I'm not sure why I hadn't noticed this before, but Athens is serving, 5,000 plus households and businesses, but there's many more residences and businesses. So why wouldn't that number be more closely aligned with the number of houses and businesses?
I don't have the details of that, but I can certainly find out and get back to you, council member.
I can jump in. That's number of customers. So in a multifamily unit, including something as large as, let's say, our housing authorities, senior housing, 200 units.
Which is one.
That's just one.
Thank you, Dan.
That's still, that would, and it's possible we have somewhere around 3,000 of those then. That's interesting.
It's
Okay.
also fair to say that there are probably I don't know what the number would be, but there are residents that aren't paying for trash service, which is a bit of a problem. You do have a municipal code that requires it, but we haven't been active in enforcing that. Some of them may legitimately allow, they can certify out. And so we do have a process for that, but in some cases, there's probably people that just aren't paying and taking the trash somewhere else.
Interesting.
If you'd like, Councilmember Sobel, I can get those statistics for you and give you a specific breakdown. We'll be meeting with Athens actually tomorrow for our monthly meeting. I can bring this up at that time.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And it's more data for our conversation later on. So thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Any other council member questions? All right. Well, Clete, I just want to say, I know that it was disruptive there doing the Palm Court, but it couldn't have happened at a better time when school wasn't in session. I think our residents need to realize Harvard Boulevard is going to create that disruption, but the end result, they're just fantastic. I think it looks great. So thank you for your report.
Well, I don't know if there was an article in the paper about that. I don't think so, right? So I think that would be a nice article if we can send something that way.
We do have that relationship with Tripepi, and we can certainly work on getting a press release out there with city manager's approval.
Just, I'm not sure what the suggestion is. Is it about the Palm Court work?
Yeah, it was a big project, and it was a total, one of our few total projects, ground up. A lot went in there, and it is beautiful. I went over there and took a look. So I don't know. Sometimes
We did do quite a bit beforehand, but you're right. We haven't done any kind of before and after.
I assure you, we have plenty of before and after pictures that staff has taken, and we will certainly work to put that on the website at a minimum, and potentially put a public notice out there as well.
I would agree. Thank you. I would agree to celebrate our successes. I've had numerous people that are residents in Palm Court that are just ecstatic, seriously stopping me to say how wonderful the project was, how well it was run, how well the contractors in the city communicated with them on a regular basis to give them updates so they knew always what was going on. And so it's just well done, job well done. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Unless there's something else, we'll move on to public comment. So at this time, members of the public may comment on any item not appearing on the agenda that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council. A virtual public comment card must be submitted to the city clerk prior to 3 p.m. the day of the meeting in order to be recognized to speak. Individuals submitting virtual public comment cards after 3 p.m. Will not be allowed to speak at this time. Individual council members may briefly respond to public comments or ask questions for clarification. The City Council may direct staff to report to the City Council on an item at a later meeting. For items appearing on the agenda, the public will be invited to make comments at the time the item comes up for the City Council consideration. If a member of the public wishes to address a consent calendar item, please submit a virtual comment card for that item. It may then be discussed separately by the council, and the public will be invited to make comments at that time. And again, to view the meeting or to participate before the meeting or participate during the meeting, please submit a comment card to our city website or by sending an email to cityclerk@spcity.org. And with that, I believe we have one general public comment from Albert Penuelas. Is he in the waiting room?
He is not in the waiting room. Excuse me, he's not in the waiting room. He did submit a public comment request, but did not give any details of what that comment is, so I'm unable to provide that information. I also had one other general public comment from Patricia Zavala, and she is also not in the waiting room to be able to, they had not logged on to be able to provide a comment. So, and I have no comments from them.
No written comments submitted either?
No.
Okay, then we'll move on. Thank you very much. City council reports. If I could ask Councilmember Cornejo, would you like to go first?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Over the past couple of weeks, I've attended a few meetings. This afternoon was the PBID, the Downtown District Improvement District, and they're moving right along. I will be funding their accounts. They've got their accounts open, and actually made some votes today to start with some quick and easy improvements to start working on right away. So we should be seeing those downtown right around the same time that we're doing the volunteer day in May. So so watch for that. It's very exciting to see that come together. I've attended a couple of orientations for new council members, which I always appreciate the staff's time. And I also appreciate the chance to get to know the different departments. And then I just did also, if you don't mind, wanted to make mention of Irish American Heritage Month. If I could just read something quickly. Bear with me. Irish American Heritage Month is celebrated by proclamation of the President and Congress in the United States to honor the achievements and contributions of Irish immigrants and their descendants living in the United States. It was first celebrated in 1991. I have Irish ancestors that came during the famine to Montana, so I bear special touch with that, but probably more than 10% of the U.S. has Irish heritage, so it's important, but also a fun way to celebrate. I know a lot of people are celebrating today, so just wanted to make mention if I could. Thank you.
Of course, thank you. Vice Mayor Crosswhite.
Yeah, a couple of things. As most of you have probably heard by now, but just in case you haven't, the Tollen Road Optimization Project, or the CUP modification for the Tollen Road landfill, was passed by the Board of Supervisors yesterday. So essentially what that means is, instead of there being a limit on the daily tons and a specific closure date for the landfill, they're allowed a certain number of truck trips, and they will be allowed to use the landfill until it is full. So that is the update on that. There's also at VCOG, they were talking about the Edison Charge Ready program, which can be found out about at sce.com/charge ready. And there's a program for grants or reimbursement to pay for the installation of charging at either multifamily dwelling units or commercial properties or even public sector projects. And so there's more information on their website, but I thought I would share that. I know that in the past we've talked about some desire for more of that kind of thing in town, and so I thought I would share that opportunity. I also heard from Dave Mullinex at that meeting that there's going to be once a month lunch meetings to go over some of the 2,500 plus bills that are in the legislature, and they're asking cities to consider sending one council member and one staff person to each of those meetings. I don't know when they're starting, but he recommended maybe doing some rotating based on different council members' interests. They didn't want all council members to come to all of the meetings, but I just wanted to give us a heads up on that, that might be something that we'd like to participate in, given the legislative platform that we've been talking about. Let's see, there's, what was the other thing I was gonna, Oh, there's also, if you know someone who is in college or who is in high school and they want to go into the public sector service, SCAG has an application that's open until April 23rd. They're going to be giving out 7 $4,000 scholarships to either a high school or college student who wants to go into public sector service. So if you know anyone who qualifies under that category, there's more information on the SCAG, which is the Southern California Association of Governments website. So I think that's what I have for now.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Crosswhite. Councilmember Sobel?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm segueing off Councilmember Crosswhite. I attended 2 different SCAG meetings. One was the Joint Policy Committee meeting, and one was the Regional Council. At the Regional Council, they voted and authorized the 6-cycle RENA, so that was big news. And then at the Joint Policy Committee meeting, it was all focused on understanding current inequity. So they had 3 presentations on land use and housing policies and practices, and how through the years that's caused inequity, on how urban renewal and transportation policies and practices has contributed inequity, and then how to a different way of understanding American economic inequity. And there's a video, and I recommend my colleagues and anybody in the city is interested in this. It was really 3 compelling presentations, and that can be found at, excuse me, the SCAG website at scag.ca.gov under joint meetings agenda. Also, along with Councilmember Cornejo, some council training, new council training, which are really just fantastic. So also appreciate staff, VCTC meeting. And then as part of VCTC, there's the Heritage Valley Policy Action Committee, where we discussed and passed the Valley Express budget. I was fortunate to be able to attend a bit of the Dia de las Mujeres, Women's Day at Veterans Park. There was a bunch of women out there with food and mariachis and dancing, so it was really, really beautiful. And as well as the downtown open market, which was, our first kind of outdoor thing since December. So it was well attended, and the vendors were, every single one was so happy to be there. 2 business celebrations openings, which were fantastic. The Santa Paula Blue Ribbon Advisory Committee, which deals with looking at our current hospital and making sure that that's an ongoing proposition, but also the possibility of a new hospital down at 126, and that conversation is going strong. And the hospital is doing really well. Births are constant, and they're putting in all the new stuff that is promised, mammography, CT scans, stuff like that. I had my personal interview along with, by himself with our strategic planning consultant. And then we had a broadband ad hoc committee, so we're starting to kind of ramp up that conversation and see how that looks, especially since some of the federal funding might help us move along that. And finally, I sat in on the American Rescue Plan webinar through the League of California Cities. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Sobel. Councilmember Ariza?
Yes, I also attended with Councilman Sobel the broadband committee meeting, and we discussed we're going to be setting up another meeting to really set our goals as to what we really want with that committee. I also had my meeting with the consultant for strategical planning that we're going to have in the next couple of weeks. Other than that, I've been gone on vacation, and today, red tier, so great. Business is opening. That was the best news ever, so thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Ariza. And I agree, we're in the red tier, and I think we need to continue to use face coverings, social distancing, and frequent hand washing so that we can move on to the next tier. It was great to attend 2 openings or 2 ribbon cuttings. One was on March 7th. Councilmember Sobel mentioned it. There were several council members at both of these. The grand opening of the Hair Bar and Spa. What happened with that location on Dean Drive is that was actually the 1-year anniversary. They had opened March 7th a year before and immediately were shut down. And, kudos to them. They survived COVID, and now they they have a lot of personnel to attend to our community needs. So again, the ribbon cutting was more of a 1-year anniversary, but we wish them all the luck to continue on. The other was Fit and Fine, which had their ribbon cutting on 1301 East Main Street. She had a business downtown, but when the pandemic happened, some of her space limited her to not being able to open because she didn't have an outside space. So that is a great location at 13th and Main. It has outside facilities. So again, 2 businesses that survived COVID, and many others also have struggled, but hopefully are surviving as well. I also attended the Blue Ribbon Committee, and the most exciting thing about that is, as you know, our hospital at some point is not going to meet seismic retrofitting standards, so they've got to build one. And some of the plans we'd seen in the past were not encouraging. They weren't as big as we thought we'd get for the valley. Well, some of the pictures that we saw the other day and designs are just phenomenal. I mean, it's a full service hospital with it's going to be great. It's going to be right there near Halleck 126. And I don't want to step too much on our city manager. He may have more to add, but on March 16th, I attended a webinar as well as over 800 attendees from California on the League of California Cities on the American Rescue Plan. Perhaps our city manager might talk a little bit about that and what it might mean to our city. And that's my report. So we move on now to the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You guys all touched on a lot of the same celebrations I was planning to announce. St. Patrick's Day for one, red tier, yay. And of course, the federal stimulus bill. As to St. Patrick's Day, please be safe out there. We have an added DUI enforcement out and about. As to the red tier, this is a really important step forward for our businesses and community. It will allow for indoor uses of things like dining and gatherings, and a sense of some reopening. But as you said, Mr. Mayor, it's still so important that people are following the guidelines, both the businesses and our residents. And yeah, the stimulus is a huge boost, especially to a community like ours. We're still sorting through what that might mean. We are going to be entitled to quite a bit of money, millions of dollars over these next basically year and a half. And I'll look forward to engaging the council in some discussion on the uses of those funds, either at your first meeting in April or maybe a special meeting. We think it's really important that we get crystal clear on what we can and cannot use the monies for. The good news, in short, is that water and sewer projects and utilities can be included, and we have both of those. Some cities don't. So we may be shifting some monies in that direction. You can also use it to support businesses and individuals and nonprofits and partnerships like that. But we can't just spend the money on anything here within the city unless it's tied to actual losses that we've experienced with COVID. And so what that essentially means is we can make up for financial losses, including projecting out to 2024. But in our case, we saw a fair amount of stability in that respect. So we didn't lose as much as other communities that are more dependent on tourism or sales tax. So like I said, we're still sorting through that, and we'll look forward to bringing you details in the coming weeks. It's certainly good timing for us because we're heading into budget and you're heading into strategic planning discussions. And earlier today, you had some discussions about revenue opportunities. So it's all, it feels very nicely timed. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Singer. Does anybody have any questions of our city manager? Okay, we will move on to the consent calendar. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment or speaker cards for general or the consent calendar?
We do not have any public speakers for consent calendar.
Thank you very much. Is there any council member that would like to either ask a question or pull an item from the consent calendar? To Councilmember Cornejo and Vice Mayor Crosswhite. Cornejo?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just, until all the minutes are all caught up, I just have to abstain from any meetings prior to December. So That's the only reminder, is that I have to abstain from those minutes.
Understood. Thank you. Vice Mayor Crosswhite?
And also on the minutes, I will make if no one's going to pull anything, I will make the motion to approve the consent calendar. I just want to include in there that I did send some clerical corrections to the minutes to the clerk. So that I'd like the motion to include the clerical corrections that I sent to the clerk.
Very good. Thank you. So it's been moved for the consent calendar. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Councilmember Sabel, second. Any more discussion? Okay, so the motion to approve the consent calendar with some corrections sent by Vice Mayor Crosswhite and, of course, Councilmember Cornejo to abstain from the minutes that she was not on the council. Madam Clerk, can we have a roll call, please?
We can't hear you, Madam Clerk.
Sorry about that. Thank you. Councilmember Sabel,
Yes.
Councilmember Cornell,
Yes.
Councilmember Ariza,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Crosswhite,
Yes.
and Mayor Juarez.
Yes.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. So we're going on to action items, starting with action item number 8. And I have a request that we switch action item 9 and 10. The reason being is I have to recuse myself for action item number 8 and action item number 10. So that way I would only have to leave once. So I would request that.
Mr. Cotty, do we need a motion to reorder the agenda?
Yes, you typically do require a motion to reorder the agenda, but I think.
So, Mayor, are you making a motion that we reorder the agenda? If
Yes,
so, I will second that motion.
I move reorganizing the agenda, those two agenda items.
And I'll second.
Very good. Motion and a second. Any more discussion on that move? If not, Madam Clerk, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Sabel,
Yes.
Councilmember Cornell. Yes. Councilmember Ariza,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Crosswhite,
Yes.
and Mayor Juarez.
Yes.
Thank you. All yes. Thank you.
Thank you. So at this point, I would like to recuse myself from this meeting, and I would like to leave the meeting in the hands of Vice Mayor Crosswhite to run the meeting. And in accordance with the Attorney General, I will turn off my video camera and also mute my microphone and return when I'm summoned.
All right, so that brings us to action item, which is number 8 on our agenda, the sports park financing. And could we hear the staff report, please?
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council. Staff is coming to you with 2 agreements to be signed. One is an agreement, the other is a promissory note. Both are related to the sports park financing. In a previous staff report and council meeting, direction had been given to return with the most cost-effective way of addressing the concerns of the financing of the park, but minimizing any interest costs related to the funding. So what we've done is presented the first agreement with Luis Limonera for the advancement of $2.5 million with the specific language that it is on a reimbursable basis. So it is not advancing $2.5 million on the date of October 2021, 2022, whenever it is. It is as the expenses are incurred. So that will minimize the interest associated. The second is the $2.5 million interfund loan transfer. This is a promissory note that is based on a similar promissory note that was presented to council in 2005 for interfund loan transfer between water and sewer. In this case, it would be between the Miscellaneous Deposits Fund and the Civic Facilities Fund, Fund 800 and Fund 225. The Miscellaneous Deposits Fund currently has $2 million that was a deposit from Luis Limonera that the city is holding. There is additional funding through couple different mechanisms. At this point, it's 200,000, and we anticipate that we're very comfortable that it'll reach that 2.5 million. If for whatever reason that does not occur, or the interest rate it is not as attractive, because the 2.5 million that is listed in the promissory note is meant to be for the second half, the second payment that is required from Luis Limonera at the 1,000th home occupancy, we would have time to come back to council and revise that promissory note. But both of the agreements both of the notes are current as of right now, and we feel that they meet the requirements and direction that council had given in the past. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Council, are there any questions? If nobody else has questions, I have a question.
Okay.
So, do you happen to have the revised promissory note that we could see?
Yes, and I should have mentioned that as well. There was some clerical errors because it was based on the past one. The amendments that were made were, one, identifying in the written language 2.5 million or 2,500,000 rather than the 2 million that's listed. Any reference to water and sewer was changed from miscellaneous deposits to the Civics Facilities Fund.
Okay, and then that is my other question, is the Civic Facilities Fund, the agenda item says from the Miscellaneous Deposits Fund to the General Fund, but it's not the General Fund, it's the Civic Facilities Fund.
Correct. The Civic Facilities Fund is where the deposits would be made when Luis Limonera makes them. So the promissory note has been identified.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions on this item?
Madam Vice Mayor, I might have missed it because the clerk was speaking with me, but Christy, did you have a chance to introduce Mr. Luleta?
No, I have not.
Maybe I could do that if that's okay, Ms. Crosswhite. David is the new project manager for Limonera Lewis, or Lewis Limonera. He's taken over that role starting with this year, and we're pleased to be working with him. And so he was joining us tonight on this item as well as on a couple of other items relating to the project tonight.
Pleasure to meet you all.
Very nice to meet you. All right, if there are no more questions, I would take a motion.
Vice Mayor, is this a motion for all three at once, or do we have to take them individually?
It can be either way, but they can all be done at once. I haven't gotten the sense from anyone that there's one item or the other that they have a burning feeling that they wouldn't want to support. So unless someone wants to add that to the pot now that they'd rather take them separately, they can be taken together.
If a note could just be made when making the motion to amend the language, not to the general fund, but to the Civic Facilities Fund.
So would someone like to make a motion? Councilmember Cornejo?
If I may, Vice Mayor, I would move approval of item 8 to approve the agreement with Luis Limonera to provide partial funding for the cost of the sports park, and authorize a temporary loan from the Miscellaneous Deposits Fund to the Civic Facilities Fund, and authorize the city manager to sign the promissory note on behalf of the city. And I would comment, since we didn't talk about it much at this point for public, that the purpose of this is to get things rolling on that sports park and not delay until the houses are constructed before we get the sports park going for our community. So this is the as I understand, the main purpose for this. So with that, I would make the motion for those three, please.
Would someone like to make a second?
I'll second.
Councilmember Sobel, is there any further discussion that anyone wants to add?
Just maybe a question. Does this at all help us in terms of shooting for the grants again or any other grants?
There's a possibility that it could help us if there are any grants that require matching funds. We aren't matching them out of our pocket, but what we could do is prove that there is a commitment to the construction of the funds. But that being said, without identifying the funds or the grants and the requirements, that'd be a little tough to say.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
And we did just submit, as of March 1st, the Prop 68 grant again.
And just one more comment for the benefit of the public is part of the reason why we want to move this up is that otherwise, by the time we get to being able to build the rest of the park, our money won't go as far. And so the idea is to help the money go as far as it can and to be able to build as much of the park as we can. We'll still be short from building everything we want, but this will help us at least get a little bit closer. So with that, I would ask the clerk, would you please do the roll call? Or take the call for the vote.
We did have a motion by Leslie Cornejo and a second by Andy Sabel. So if we can call a vote, will be Councilmember Sabel,
Yes.
Councilmember Cornell,
Yes.
Councilmember Ariza,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Crosswhite,
Yes.
and Mayor Juarez is recused from this item. Thank you.
Thank you. And very nice to meet you, David. All right. That brings us to our, what was formerly item number 10, the Public Benefit Housing Program. And I do believe that we have a couple of public comments on this. Madam Clerk, do you have those? I think we'll start with the public comments and then we'll take the staff presentation.
Yeah, I just want to check the box to see who all is here currently.
Both Linda Brunschweiger and Ellen Brokaw are in the meeting now.
Okay. Thank you.
And I think we had a couple
And then
of
I think there were a
comments.
couple that were written that we were going to read into the record.
Yes, and Vice Mayor Crosswhite, I have 3 items, 3 speaker cards on item 10.
Okay.
And none of those people are here to speak right now. I do not see them. I have Margot Bangs. I have Marianne Cruz. Crossy, thank you. And Kate English. I do have written speaker information that they've provided. Would you like me to read that? None of them are available.
I would request that, because I know a couple of them specifically asked that we read their comments into the record. So if we could read the parts of their comments that pertain to item number 10, because I know some of them made comments on other items. But if we could, at this time, just read the items that relate to number 10.
Sure. Okay, so I will go ahead and start with Margot Bangs. Hello, my name is Margot Bangs, and I am a resident of Santa Paula. The harvest at Limonera project has been a stream of broken promises. Now, after repeatedly delaying the development of apartments, it seems that there is no intention to develop them at all. I am asking you, Mayor and council members, to use this experience as a lesson. In addition to the steps being taken to create a public benefit housing program, we must also take steps to ensure that we never allow developers to take advantage of our community again. We must increase the in lieu of fees so that they are a deterrent rather than encouragement to abandon affordable housing development. Harvest is not serving the interest of our community. It is not affordable for our community. Most of the things that made it attractive to our residents have been cut from the plans, and past bad management means that they continue to take with nothing to give. We have got to stop allowing big developers to steamroll the interests and benefits to our community. And that was the end of her comment on number 10, item number 10. Would you like me to go to the next one?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay. The next one is from Marianne Kaus. Did I pronounce that right again?
Krause.
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 Thank you.
Krause.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Marianne, if you're listening. Item number 10, the public benefit housing provision in the EA1 developer agreement was undefined and therefore not actually providing a benefit, while the proposed down payment assistance program is very limited in its benefit to the people that were supposed to be helped. It is tangible and we can be implemented. It is unfortunate that the fund is not going to be capitalized upfront so that potential home buyers perhaps have a broader choice of product types and prices range. If the original development intent holds, the most expensive homes in Harvest will be among the last ones built. Buyers who must wait their turn until there is money in the down payment assistance account may not be able to afford the homes that are for sale at that time. And as down payment assistance goes, $25,000 is not very much money. I ran a similar program 25 years ago in the Piru area, and our loans were $25,000 on homes ranging in price from $140,000 to $155,000. However, if the city chooses to partner with another agency, such as the Ventura County Community Development Corporation, whose funds can be combined with the city's, a more substantial benefit may be offered. I recommend that the city pursue that approach to make sure that the intended public benefit is effective. And that's the end of that comment for item number 10. I also have a public comment from Kate English for item number 10. While I am in support of public benefit housing, this benefit falls short of what was originally envisioned. Only 20 buyers will benefit rather than 100 originally planned. I recommend that the city pursue additional opportunities for down payment assistance. I am deeply dismayed that the apartments originally planned in this development may not be built. ? While I applaud Limonera's commitment to Santa Paula and the hospital, it also seems like there is a precedent of short notice staff updates from the Harvest project that have served as a way to radically shift the plan away from the original commitments in the project that won the public over. This project is vastly different than what we as a community supported previously. While I realize gentrification has more than one side, in a deeply impoverished community that largely consists of people of color, I beg the city council to pay very close attention to pivots and plans from a large development like this. This will shape our community for decades to come and feels largely targeted now at people who are not from our community and who do not reflect our community in demographics or social economics status. We must provide a mix of housing opportunities, not all single family units. We must apply a racial justice and equity lens when thinking about these issues. And that was the end of her comment on number 10. And that is all the public comments I have on item 10, Vice Mayor.
Okay, the other speakers are for other items.
We do have a lot of the same speakers, but they are on other items. Yes.
Okay, and the two speakers that are on the online are for other items as well.
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. All right, could we please hear the staff report?
Yes, thank you, Vice Mayor and Council. I'm going to share a screen and start through this. Is that clear for everyone?
Yes.
Yes, okay, good. So, public benefit housing program, I wanted to throw up what the recommendation is and to adopt a resolution establishing the program and then authorizing staff to direct request for qualifications to have servicing agency for the home first-time home loan program, and then direct staff to administer the public benefit housing program. There is a lot of back and forth that went into putting together public benefit program. That was both with Lehman-Era Lewis and with our internal housing and homelessness standing committee, and trying to be able to identify where we started was a very nebulous program, mainly because Lehman-Era Lewis provided some options, and really what it comes down to is it's the city's ability to be able to take the money that they're going to provide to be able to put together a program. The idea of the program from the beginning was that it would target public employees, and public employees being defined as people that work in the public sector or in service type industry, medical, education, municipal, county and state government. The way this was targeted was the idea that it would be for home purchases within Harvest. As was mentioned by a couple of the speakers, originally there was an idea of allocating a certain number of homes for this program. That morphed into being able to provide funding for home purchase assistance and funding for rental assistance. With that shift of currently not having rental property within Harvest in their plans, we're still in conversations and negotiations on what that will look like, and are committed to be able to have multifamily within there. Another conversation. But in lieu of not having rental properties right now, we originally had $250,000 that was going to be set aside for home buyers assistance. Since there are no rental properties right now, we're looking at shifting that to $500,000 for first-time home buyer assistance for public employees. If I don't say it later, I wanted to mention it now. There's a lot that's going on within the housing market in general and within Santa Paula, and looking at demands and needs and availability of developers and things like that. As time progresses, everything that we're going to be dealing with housing policy, there probably will be shifts and changes in it, and we'll be coming back to council. And I say that because should there be apartments brought into this project, it may be something we may want to revisit later, is earmarking some of that money for rental assistance. Now, the program proposal moving forward is that it'd be a $25,000 loan. And there's a lot of discussion about this, and mainly that's because the idea was the options were, do we want to give somebody enough money that they would be able to purchase a home that may be outside of their income to debt ratio, or could put them in a situation that may be challenging for them should they have any, catastrophic event, which could happen to anyone. But the idea was, and also that if we ended up having a larger loan amount, that would limit the number of families that we'd be able to assist. So the idea was, coming forward, was to have a $25,000 loan that was to folks that had an approved home loan in Harvest, and this was to help reduce what their loan to debt ratio was and provide assistance. And the idea was to have a 30-year no interest loan that would be forgivable at year 30. So giving people a better opportunity and lowering their barrier to entry, and not putting people in a difficult situation, but creating people that were able to meet the needs, to be able to give them a better opportunity within Harvest. And then one thing that's pretty important about this is we don't have the capacity within our staff or our organization to manage a loan process. And keeping in mind, these are 30-year loans. There won't be a whole lot of them, but even that being said, being able to vet the applications, go through the process, and ensure that they have all that's identified within which you have within your recommendations for a loan program. We were recommending that we have a third party that has experience in this. And as mentioned by one of our speakers, Marianne Krause, there are community development corporations out there that do this type of processing. And we spoke to one of them, and their average for working with secured loans, and that's working with, an example is working with one city where they have $23,000 first-time home buyer loans. They're able to leverage the relationships and the opportunities that they have. Their average is about $100,000 in assistance that they're able to provide to new home buyers. So one way to look at this is not just one element, but it could be combined with multiple elements in gap financing for people buying houses. And then finally, the servicing and management fee would be defined by the RFP. And I've looked at it in two different ways. Some organizations charge a percentage, some organizations charge a flat fee per loan. Since we have a flat loan amount, that probably provides some latitude as far as that discussion goes. So just to talk about, when we're talking about what the range of income that this loan would apply to is from median income to what we call 150% of median income. So we got low income at 80%, moderate income at 120%, and attainable income defined at 150%. And what that determines, the reason why we have that 150 in there is understanding what the cost of homes within Harvest, the range that they have. We needed to go to that ceiling to ensure that we could have people that could qualify to be in there. And this probably provides a better example of that. When we're looking at the lower income sales price, as you can see in here, just say, if we just stick with 3-bedroom home, it's about $217,000 would be what would be within a lower income range. And as we know, I don't know that there's any homes in Ventura County for $217,000, but that's, then next, looking at moderate sales price, which is 120% of median, that puts a 3-bedroom house at $344,000. But keep in mind, when we're talking about people qualifying and funding, if people have, significant down payments or have some type of a windfall based on whatever, family money or assistance outside of what we're able to provide, it may be able to fill that gap. And then finally, the ceiling that we provided was at 150% of median when you're looking at a 3-bedroom at 45, which is closer to what is the kind of the base level within Harvest. So really talking about fiscal impacts for this program, really the cost to the administration and management of the loan program will be revolved back into the loan. There will be some personnel impacts, both on the application review and going through the process, but ideally, most of that would be outsourced. So again, the recommendation is for the first-time home buyer loan program, and authorizing staff to initiate a request for qualifications to get a servicing provider, and direct staff to administer the public benefit housing program. I went a little bit quick there, but I wanted to have some time for discussion about some of these elements in more details and some of the information that the speakers had. So I'll turn it over to council for questions.
All right, would anyone like to start?
Well, nobody else jumping in? I'll go for it.
Councilmember Sobel?
Thank you, Vice Mayor. So, yeah, so the packet didn't describe any leverage or outside money coming in. So my comments will be from my my reading of this. So, and I did just a couple pencil paper things, and for the type of families where the goal is for this to assist, I can't see that anybody would qualify. One, the low income, well, as the slides you just showed there, James, all of this assistance, not anything, the cheapest house at Harvest isn't in the range of any of these income levels. Part one, so it just seems just by definition that it wouldn't work out just with what we're talking about here. Two, hoping that the families are bringing in enough for a down payment on a $500,000 to $600,000 house, kind of just by definition seems like kind of an odd proposition that they would have that kind of money. In the packet, it did mention that, part of the application process is to have a 30-year fix. So it's hard to get a 30-year fix depending without a 20% down payment. So, and then, right. And then, we went from 5,000, which agreed is not very useful, to 25,000, which I believe is not useful as well. So, yeah, I just, it seems like kind of a process that's doomed to failure. Now, again, I'll say it, without understanding how, the leverage works and without different entities coming in, that would be a useful part of the conversation. So, and if that's part of the thing where people understand, we're going to help out with the 25,000, but these are three other entities that are going to step in and probably be able to get you to 100,000. Well, then that makes much more sense. But if we can't, kind of guarantee that process or make it very clear, then I think 25,000 is too low. And if we're going to do something, yes, we diminish the number of households that would be helped, but we vastly increase the loan amount. And then also, I'm in there it says that it's forgivable at 30. So basically, that's a grant if you make it till 30, and that seems also kind of a better use of that money if we're trying to help people out. So yeah, I'll pause there for a minute and see other conversations and then maybe step in again later.
Councilmember Cornejo?
Thank you. I realize that this may not apply to a lot of people, but it could make the difference to some first-time buyers. I just have family experience from first-time buyers that they get into a loan with 3% down on those first-time buyer programs. Having the extra 25,000 might enable them to get to the point where they won't have to pay the mortgage insurance for very long, either not at all or for very long. If you look at 485,000 and a 3% down, that's about 15,000. But then they're going to be stuck paying hundreds of dollars a month in mortgage insurance. Paying that down and getting their equity down enough to the point where they don't have to pay that is a huge advantage to them as well. So I think this program is worth doing, but I think with the information we've received as well, that there are other programs to partner with that to make it more doable for these first-time buyers and not set them up for failure on such a big first-time purchase is good information. But I would be in support of that just for that reason alone, just to enable them to get down to that point where they don't have to pay the mortgage insurance. So, thank you.
Let's see.
Yeah.
Councilmember Ariza?
Yeah, I agree with Leslie. I mean, 25,000. I have 4 children that have just gone through the first-time home buyers, and yeah, the 3% they got in, but as they jump in, one has already jumped to another house. So I mean, anything helps at 25,000. And I realize that we're trying to get as many people as we can. I think I would support it only because of that. If I'd like to see a report, if Andy's correct and nobody's qualifying, then we need to know about that and make a modification. But I know from my experience with my 4 children, they were able to get some assistance with the first-time home buyer programs. So I would support it.
And can I say one more thing?
Yeah, Councilmember Sobo.
Yeah, just before staff jumps in. The other thing I need a little clarity on too is, if I understand correctly, it'll be the initial 50,000, then another 40,000 because we reached 100 houses, so we're 90,000, and then soon another 40, which gets us to 130,000. So that was mentioned in one of the comments that if there's some way that we can increase that amount, the pool of money, so we can help more families, because at least by my math, that's like 5 or 6 families, but maybe I'm misunderstanding something. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so I want to roll that question over to staff, because that was one of my questions, was if we could respond to the concern in the speaker that also relates to that in terms of the timing of when the money is going to come in and the housing that will be built at different stages. Because it was originally the plan that the most expensive housing would be built last. And so is that what do we know what the plan for the building of the housing is now, and how the money rolling in is going to relate to that? Will there still be houses that are even close to being attainable by the time the rest of the money comes in?
Vice Mayor, council members, that has yet to be determined, because there is some shifting and potential shifting in the specific plan. For instance, the school site, which also contains multifamily, and the sites south of that, which could potentially have multifamily. So there's some other options of what could happen as far as affordability down the road. As it stands now, if we take those parcels out of the picture, what's moving forward is going up into the foothills, which is going to be more view lots and will be more expensive. One thing I want to kind of underscore, well, 2 things I want to kind of underscore. One is I didn't put in that leverage information. I just wanted to discuss it because it's not absolute. Those depend on the people, depend on who we get as far as a provider and servicing. But it's an option that's out there. There are funds out there for first-time home buyers. The other thing is, as we have these conversations about housing, I want to be sure that we understand when we talk about affordability, it goes across all ranges. People within all income ranges in California are pretty strapped, unless you're just independently wealthy. And when we look at potentially, these houses are more expensive, but when you look at median home price in Santa Paula, it's challenging in and of itself. So I think when we're looking at potentially, in most cases, probably going to be 2 income, public service workers that are able to get here. But to Mr. Ariza's comments, and also Ms. Conejo, it gets people that are maybe on that bubble over the edge. And the other thing to keep in mind, I hate to bring it up, but there's Melrose and HOAs in there too. So being able to reduce those costs, sometimes people get, surprised by all that comes after the fact. You move in, and then there's these other things and you don't just want people to be so on that line that once they move in, they've got to move out. So those are some of the things I kind of want to put out there. But from the standpoint of affordability and what's coming down the road, most of what's going to be out there is going to be more expensive than what's in there. What is selling better than anything else right now are those 6-pack and 4-pack homes, which are the smaller lots and more dense products. They're looking for opportunities to do more of that. So that what we have in our specific plan now doesn't reflect probably what we're going to have, which is going to be more of those units available.
Because I guess that was my concern, is and then I'll ask hold on. Because I think part of my concern was, like the speaker said, if the money isn't available until most everything is built out, will there still be stuff that, right? And so I guess that it's more because I think that there is going to be stuff earlier on, but I don't remember the exact when that last bit of money was supposed to come in.
It's 40,000 per 100 units. There have been around 500 units sold to the developers, and we've got close to 200 that have actually been sold to buyers. So those C of Os we're already close to 200. So that's right there is 200,000. Is that $200,000?
80,000.
80,000. I'm trying to do math in my head here. Not good idea. But
Right.
yeah,
So I guess my only concern was that the funds that come in for the last, say, 400 houses that are built, if at that point all we're building are the view lots that are up on the hill, there's a little bit of concern that those may not, I mean, even at 150% of median income, folks may not qualify unless they have 8 kids or 7 kids, so I guess that's the,
Well, here's one other benefit that I failed to mention. The changes that I provided to you, that Julie provided in the staff report and agreement, we're going forward with addendum to the development agreement that in a couple weeks that addresses the public benefit program. And the additions that we have in there relate to build out of harvest and payoff of loans. So if loans are paid off somewhere in this process because someone sold a house or got a home equity line, that comes back into this fund. And if homes aren't available in harvest and we still have this fund, all of that money can be used anywhere in Santa Paula, which means we could actually use it towards low income or anything within that range. So it's, again, our goal is to do everything we can for people within all income ranges, obviously with emphasis on those that are most disadvantaged or most at risk.
So then my question related to what you just said was, in your presentation, you said that the loan was forgivable at the end of 30 years, but in the application, it says that it says repayment of the city loan principal balance will be required at the end of the 30-year term of affordability or at sale of the property, whichever comes first. So is it forgivable at 30 years or is it due paid at 30 years?
That the recommendation is that it be forgivable at 30 years. And
okay, so so it would be that we change the language in the application so that it said it would either be repaid if the house was sold, or it would be forgivable if they stayed in the house for 30 years.
Correct. Okay. Unless council chose otherwise, but that's.
So if that's the staff recommendation, so we would be fixing the application to reflect that.
Correct.
Okay.
Madam Mayor?
Yeah.
Could I just point out, first of all, that you do have Mr. Luletta here if you have questions about the further build out of the property and what their plans are, but also pertinent to this conversation is there's nothing that prevents the council from considering fully funding this program at the $500,000 now. If we're at the peak of housing costs, we can do that. And then as this money trickles in, use it to either repay ourselves or repay the housing in lieu fund. So keep that in mind. That's not really before you tonight, but if we get this program started and there seems to be instant demand, even though we'll only have probably $90,000 to $130,000 to start, you could put more money into it.
Mr. Luletta, did you want to add something to the conversation?
A couple things. In programming the project, think of it, and I'm assuming you all know this, there's 3 phases of the project and call them approximately 500 each. We're through the first phase, and then next is the foothill phase, which is north of it. And true, there are some lots that go across the top of that phase, I want to say approximately a third, that are the larger lots and a little bit larger homes. but we are absolutely sensitive to the price points of the market and keep it very conservative. Below on that phase 2 are actually very similar product to what we had in phase 1. In addition, we're even going after a little bit higher density product up there that will keep the pricing down. And what I mean by pricing is we can't guarantee any pricing, but I can see my price range from the builders today, and there's obviously inflation, currently between $485,000 to approximately $640,000. And those will change over time, but that's how initially we're programming the project. And then going to phase 3 is lower, which is the Santa Paula Creek. And that's another 500, which will also be similar to phase 1's densities. Now, this project will take some time to absorb. We program it through 2027 in absorptions. So over that time, of course, there'll be price inflation as things go on, but the builders and the land developers are sensitive to it. And we know that the project will not absorb unless we keep those prices affordable along the way. And as James mentioned, we will always consider if we can, put apartments somewhere or how we can make it work or work with that side of the equation. It's a tough one to solve because of the economics with regards to the apartments. Currently, these homes that are selling in Santa Paula at this project are less than the rent. And so if a person can qualify to buy a home, they're paying a cost on a monthly basis less than the rent equivalent to it. So that's what makes it hard for the apartment side of the equation along the way. And then I was also going to add, with regards to the this program, and maybe this is what James is suggesting, and I don't have full authority to do this, but I can review it if you guys want me to pursue it, which is if there's a demand of qualified buyers that is faster than the amount of money that we've funded you, then we would produce the additional funding to make sure your qualified buyers had that funding. In other words, can we accelerate the funding if you have more qualified buyers because the market can absorb it now, interest rates are low, costs will go up, then I'm pretty sure we'll agree to accelerate that funding. I just don't have that authority, but I'm 90% confident they would agree with it. So if that helps, I don't know.
All right, thank you. I think that's helpful information to have. I'm trying to see if yes, Councilmember Sobel.
Yeah, so thank you for that and for, the possibility of accelerating that's encouraging. But I just want to make sure I understand. So apartments are not a given. So it just depends what the market will bear in the next 7 years or something.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I think the only other two questions that I had relate to the paperwork. This seems like a ton of paperwork. And so I guess, and I don't know if that's something that when we do the RFP for the partner, if they can help suggest a process so that this paperwork maybe could be a little streamlined. As someone who's recently gone through or trying to go through a refi, I know that just getting that paperwork together for one organization is a lot. And so trying to get it together for 2 and possibly 3 organizations could be absolutely overwhelming for a first-time home buyer. So I don't know if you know anything about that or if that's something that we can ask potential partners up to sort of look at our paperwork and see if there's ways that we can work together to make that not so overwhelming. And then the other piece would be, if we go forward with this, I think that it would be important to see if there aren't partners who would be willing to go in with us to make even the price of getting into one of these houses even more affordable than our project alone.
Vice Mayor Crosswhite, council members, absolutely. What was put in there as far as paperwork was a suggestion based on what I was able to glean from other first-time home buyer programs and the home program that other cities have done. Ideally, again, we're outside of our core competency. We want somebody, I mean, we can put that within the RFQ, that looking for someone that can produce the paperwork, manage the paperwork, and bring and leverage additional funds that can assist buyers. And that's, good CDCs, that's what they do anyway. And, one other aspect that's really important is, being able to vet buyers and give them, one of the things that's in there is HUD training, that people having the financial wherewithal to understand what they're doing as a first-time home buyer. And it's, as you mentioned, when you have to sign 120 pages with your little signature at the bottom, how many people really read that? And all those things that are really important as far as accountability and financial responsibility.
All right. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I've got another one. I'm a little unclear. So this resolution is establishing a first-time home buyer loan program. And it's item 10, correct?
Yes.
And we will be amending some agreements in the past. So looking at, I'm on page 146 here, but in addition to this, it's also talking about amending offsite improvement timelines, the traffic circulation infrastructure, and I think there's a third one in there. So
I believe, Councilmember Sobel, you're talking about the amendment to the development agreement, which will actually be coming to us at the next meeting, but it's included here for our information. But all of that, those other items that you're speaking about, we're not actually approving tonight. Right. They were just there so we could see how this related to that.
And was that specified someplace? That's where the clarity I'm seeking.
I believe it said it in the staff report.
It did say,
and in the resolution, it refers to the fact that we will be having, this is contingent upon us approving the development agreement modification, which won't come to us until the next meeting.
Right.
Did I get that right?
That's absolutely, that's right on point.
Correct. That's correct as I read it.
Yeah, well, I looked 3 times and I just couldn't find that, but I figured it was in there someplace. So I still can't find it, but I'll look again. So thank you. I just want to make sure that was clear to people when we vote.
So the only thing that I would ask in our resolution is that we add a little asterisk if we end up moving forward with this, that we add a little asterisk that clarifies that we will reevaluate on an annual basis the numbers that are in our chart, so that we don't have to pass a new resolution to change the numbers every year, or somehow just say there that it will be based on the 80, 20, and 50% median income, and that this will shift annually when those numbers are released. However you want to phrase that, but I just think that would help with clarification, since this is in the actual resolution and it doesn't just say that we're going to use the 80, 20, and 50. Since there's a chart there, I would just like clarification that will be updated as those numbers change each year.
One way to phrase that would be based on the adjusted median income, the annual adjusted median income for Ventura County that we would.
I think the committee did discuss that.
Yes.
Yeah, we had discussed it. It wasn't clearly, I think that wording could be massaged in the resolution just so that it's clear.
Yeah, that's a good catch. Good catch.
Doing that by reference is much better. That way you're not married to numbers, and it'll be updated as that data changes every year.
Yeah. Are there any more questions or comments for discussion on this item? Or would someone like to make a motion? Oh, wait, I had one question before we do that. It says in the application, that the amount can also be used towards closing costs. If it's a loan, how does that work? Because don't closing costs go to someone else? So can they in fact be used on closing costs or just on the down payment?
The
I wasn't sure
intent,
technically how that worked.
yeah, the intent was the loan to the individual, not to the, not to Harvest. So it's the idea that that's a second that is on the house, but it's to that individual. So I went based on what I could find in other communities and what was done, and that was criteria that was allowed. It may be worth a deeper dive to make sure that that's okay, but it was consistent with all that I found. And the other aspect of that is there may be some things that we may need to modify based on having that servicing agency and what their recommendations will be.
Because I can definitely see how if it's a grant, that makes sense for it to be used on both closing costs and principal. But I was struggling a little bit to wrap my brain around if it's a loan, how that works. And so I maybe that's just a technical, or maybe that's something that once we have a partner who's done this before, they can clarify how it works and whether it makes sense to include both of those things.
Well, earlier, Mello-Roos and HOA was mentioned, and that would also be kind of an odd thing, but useful.
Well, I think those were mentioned in terms of those are other things that people would have to pay, but those, right, since those are ongoing costs, I don't think that those would be things that they would pay with this loan in particular.
Yeah. Ideally, I see once we have somebody to service the loan, that one, we're going to probably come back to council with at least an update. But I think at the most, if they have recommendations that are, our goal is to do this well and to service as many people as we can. And if we, again, can get with somebody that really knows what they're doing, we can probably make this more robust than what we have right here. But that's
okay. All right. Would anyone like to get Councilmember Cornejo?
Just to mention that the regulators will probably dictate how this all goes on the paperwork and what's allowed. So, working with a lending agency that's familiar with all that, they'd be able to guide us on that, I think.
All right. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll jump in. I move to adopt Resolution 7329, establishing a first-time home buyer loan program, authorizing and directing staff to initiate a request for qualifications to identify an administrator to provide loan servicing, and directing staff to administer the public benefit housing program proposed in the draft Second Amendment to the development agreement.
And just to clarify, that includes the version of the resolution that staff sent out earlier, within the additional change of referring to the based on the annual median income, so that those two things are both included in your motion, correct?
Yes.
Yes, and the clarity of if it's a forgiven loan or a payback loan that you mentioned.
Yeah, that's a Scribner's error. Correct. I will correct that.
Okay.
Okay.
So Councilmember Sabel, you're going with the version that it's that if it's forgiven if they live in the house for 30 years.
30 years, yeah.
Okay.
And I'll second.
All right. We have a motion by Councilmember Sobel and a second by Councilmember Ariza. Is there any further discussion? All right. I will pass it over to our clerk for the vote.
Councilmember Cornell?
Yes.
Councilmember Sabel?
Yes.
Councilmember Ariza?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Crosswhite?
Yes.
And Mayor Juarez has recused himself from this item. Thank you.
And someone, I assume, will contact him now to bring him back.
Yes.
Thank you. I heard the knock on the wall. Vice Mayor Crosswhite, thank you for running that meeting on action items 8 and 10. The reason for my recusal, I neglected to mention it, was that ownership of stock in Limonera. That was my recusal, the reason for the recusal. We're going to go on to action item number 9, which was moved, switched with item number 10. I do want to make a comment that the Housing in Lieu Trust Fund Administration does have an item there about Limonera and the funds that would be in lieu funds that would, if approved by the council, would go to the Housing Trust Fund of Ventura County. Conferring with the city attorney, John Cotty, the fact that this money that's going to this trust fund has the potential to benefit potentially many people in Santa Paula. So therefore, I do not have to recuse myself for this item. Mr. Cotty, unless you want to add anything.
Mayor Juarez, I think you stated it correctly. This is a citywide program. Funds are generated citywide, and funds can be utilized citywide. So it's not something that you would have to recuse yourself for.
Very good. Thank you. So we are going to move on to item number 9, and I believe we have some public comments that were submitted, or do we have any public speakers?
Oops. Yes, Mayor, we do. We have 3 speaker cards on item number 9. We do have one person, I believe, who is here to be able to speak. Let me just check that they're still here, and that is Ellen Brokaw.
Okay, yes, there. I see her. Hello, Mrs. Brokaw. Please, you have the floor if you would like to speak on action item number 9.
Thank you so much, Mayor and council members. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I submitted this letter to you. I wasn't expecting to speak, but I will, I assume you haven't seen the letter, so I will pretty much read what I have to say about agenda item 9. I have on that item a question and a couple of suggestions. The question, I'll give you a little background. I'm here actually speaking for the Santa Paula House Farm Workers Group and the House Farm Workers Organization. Our House Farm Workers Committee in Santa Paula has been providing comment to the City Council about use of in lieu funds for many years. And this proposed program lays out a comprehensive and transparent administrative process, which is terrific. It's big progress. However, on page 123, proposed program overview, the first bullet point in referring to the Inclusionary Housing Trust Fund. Will the Inclusionary Housing Trust Fund, which is not the pot of money that we apparently you are addressing in this recommended new procedure, will that follow the same rules? And can it be rolled into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund so that in lieu fees are all in one pot? I don't really understand why we are now going to have 2 separate funds, or maybe that's not true. My suggestions are relating to page 126, the proposal review. I wish you would add another community member to the review panel. The goal of this proposed program is to, quote, more effectively and expediently use funds for affordable housing. Community participation and support is really a key component, and it should be emphasized and enhanced throughout this proposed process. Without community buy-in, affordable housing is very difficult to build. It would also enhance this program's effectiveness to add community members to the annual program review described on page 124, or at least to invite public comment. Excuse me. My second suggestion relates to page 128 and Appendix B, page 133, the competitive selection criteria, bullet point 4. The list of special needs populations should include farm workers and large families plus female-headed households as per the HCD guidelines. There are a large number of farm workers in Santa Paula, as you know, and their need for affordable housing opportunities continues. The whole community benefits when farm worker families are adequately housed. Children's health and school performance improves, family stress is reduced, overcrowding and its negative neighborhood impacts disappears. And those are my question and my suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment. What I'd like to do is continue with the other written public comments, and then during the presentation, perhaps either Dan Singer or James Mason can include those. If those answers aren't available, I'm sure staff will reach out to you with those answers. Thank you very much for your comment. The next, Madam Clerk, do we have 3 more written comments? Or actually, yes, 3 more written comments, I believe.
We do have 3 other written comments, but the individuals did not show onto the Zoom. Would you like me to read those, Mayor?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I will start with Margot Banks. I read for her on item number 10. She provided the same information. She just indicated that it was a comment for both item 9 and item 10. Would you like me to reread that, Mayor, or just know that it's the same wording for both?
I think it's already been read once. I believe that would suffice, Mr. Potty.
Okay.
Yes, it does not need to be read again.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay. The next one is Marianne Croce. And yes, and let's see, item number 9. I appreciate the effort that has gone into developing an objective method for dispersing in lieu fees and the commitment to public transparency. This has been 15 years in the making, and I believe will serve the city well. I support the process that has been proposed. However, I would recommend that the city use the same application form that either the County of Ventura or Housing Trust Fund Ventura County use for disbursement of affordable housing funds. Since applicants will likely also be applying to one or both of those agencies, this would reduce the paperwork for applicants. If those forms are deficient in providing the information the city desires, the city could require just a 1-page supplementary form to obtain the desired information. And that was the end of her comment on number 9. I also have one more comment from Kate English on number 9. Would you like me to read that as well?
Yes, please.
Okay. My name is Kate English. I have lived in Santa Paula for 20 years. I thank the city council members for their service to our city. I support the proposed procedures for the distribution of in lieu fees to future affordable projects. I strongly encourage the city to use the same application requirements that the county or the Housing Trust Fund Ventura County utilizes, which will make it easier for the applicants and help the city to take advantage of the wisdom and structures of agencies that already facilitate this type of funding. And that was the end of her comment. And we had Ellen Brokaw who did do hers already. So that was the end of the public comments.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Now we have a staff report from Dan Singer and James Mason, our Economic Development Director.
James will be taking it away once again. It's his night. James, you're on mute.
Okay.
Can't see your screen though.
How was that?
See it? Okay.
Okay. So item 9, Affordable Housing Trust. So one thing I wanted to clarify, this will help with Ellen Brokaw's question, and that's Affordable Housing Trust Fund is fed by the housing in lieu fee. So those are kind of interchangeable. That language kind of used that was on the bottom of page 123, Inclusionary Housing Trust Fund. That's Affordable Housing Trust Fund. It's just words getting jumbled. We're using them so many times. I probably could be more consistent in calling it one thing so we know, but in any event, that's where we are on that. So staff recommends the City Council review the proposed program to administer the funds from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and provide feedback to staff. Now, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund comes from in lieu fees, which is within our municipal code, and defines what in lieu fees, how they're gathered and how they're distributed, and who has the authority for that. And one question that did come up was in section A, it says, except for planned area projects. That is a holdover from the redevelopment agency. Planned area projects were redevelopment areas. So it no longer applies. It's just something that still exists within our ordinance. So that will eventually get, we've got several references to redevelopment agency, successor agency that we need to vet out of our code. And so what we're here today is based on B, which is creating an administration for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And council, based on state law and our ordinance, must use the fund exclusively to provide for affordable housing and for reasonable costs associated with the development of affordable housing. And as I mentioned earlier, I wanted to make sure that I have a constant thread in this. As we deal with housing and housing needs in our community, we've got our housing element coming up. We've got the requirements that come from the State Department of Housing and Community Development and our regional housing numbers. We're constantly going to be looking at those and looking what we can do to fine tune what's happening within the market, where the demand is. So everything that you see before you, we want to have really solid bones with the understanding that there may be some modifications as we move through and find new things as we work through this. This is all new territory for us. And we want to make sure that we're flexible enough to make sure that we're using it to the best of ability, which is to provide affordable housing to all Santa Paulans. So source and application of the funds. The majority of these funds are coming from the East Area 1 Development Agreement, and that's payment in lieu of development of units. And within that ordinance, any developer that's doing 10 or more homes has the option of either building low or low income homes, 10% low, or 15% low, or a combination of that, or providing an in lieu fee instead of that, and in lieu of building those. In this case, Lehman Lewis, through their development agreement with the city, identified that at $4,642 per unit with a $6.5 million cap. Now, the difference in this agreement, two things. One, at the time of the agreement, that was basically similar to any analogs with cities around us of what an in lieu payment was. Secondly, the difference in the harvest agreement is that in a typical development, as I mentioned before, either 10 or 15% low or low income, that would be the differential that they would pay based on that. So if they build 100 units, them would have to pay the differential. In this case, Harvest is paying that $4,600 for every single in their development. And those funds can be used for development.
James, could you repeat that sentence? Yes. Your audio cut in and out, and that was an important one.
Okay. What it was is that in most cases with in lieu fees, they're based on a percentage of development. So if a developer didn't build either 10% or 15% low or low income housing, then they would need to provide the difference between provide an in lieu fee based on that number of units. So either 10% or 15%. In the Harvest case, they are providing this amount for every unit that's out there. So in some respects, this may be lower than what analogs are right now, but this is a development agreement that's already been approved. But they are providing it for all units as opposed to just 10% or 15%. And then those funds can be used for development of affordable housing, rental or ownership citywide. In addition to that, since this ordinance passed, we've only had one other development that qualified or at least opted to do in lieu fees, and that was the Williams at Rosewood. Other developments that have happened since 2005, I believe, either did some type of negotiation or other community investment that bypassed doing that. But we really haven't had a lot of housing development that was 10 or more units that qualified for this. So as it stands, I believe Rosewood was about $167,000 is what they paid into this account. So that's that plus what we're getting out of Harvest and some funds that previously existed. So wanted to go through just all the things that Housing in Lieu Fee and Affordable Housing Trust Fund could be used for. Mortgage subsidies, site acquisition, banking, land, rent subsidies, construction financing, issuance of bonds, providing redevelopment funds, providing rehabilitation of funds to preserve existing affordable housing. So as you go through these things, you can see there's a lot of opportunities to address all layers of housing within the community. And the one challenge that we have is as we bring this forward, understanding what we have the capacity to be able to move through. And as I mentioned before, what is the demand within the community? What are the things, what's the low-hanging fruit that we really need to use this money for to ensure that we're getting the end result, which is affordable housing for all Santa Paulans. So as we have a process in place, the goal is to make sure that we get that information out there so that we can get respondents in our RFP process for these funds. The good news right now with what has happened with our regional housing numbers, when I say regional, state housing numbers and what the requirements are, there's a new shift in the market of people and organizations that are learning how to do affordable housing, and the folks that do it well are poised to move quickly. So we're in a situation right now where demand is high and the opportunity is high, and the folks that are out there in the market that are able to build this have a lot of interest. So this is really a sweet spot for us right now for Santa Paula, and current things that we're doing within our city ordinance based on requirements from HCD. So we're in a good spot to be able to do this. The key is making sure that this information gets out to the people that can do this and have the capacity. And once we have the ability to identify them, really what it comes down to is being able to review what we have as far as applications. And mentioned earlier, we would have a review panel. Our recommendation was to have city employees on that panel, have an individual from the community with housing advocacy or finance experience, and an individual from outside agency or government entity. And that, again, is staff recommendation subject to council's suggestions, recommendations, otherwise. And also one other element is at the completion of an application, we need to have someone in place that can do underwriting and be able to look at those applications and analyze it from a financial perspective. Again, not a capacity that we have as far as mortgage financing, development financing for affordable housing. So we make sure that we kind of dot the I's, cross the T's, and have a good project if we're going to approve something, we want to make sure it's going to be successful. Selection criteria. Oh, one thing I wanted to mention was a question comment from council also, and I can get into it later, but one of the elements that's in there talks about developer criteria, and it seemed like there was a double recommendation. And one side of it talks about developers being able to secure financing. The other one talks about developers having experience in doing projects and doing the financing. So it's, what did they bring to the table? What past history do they have in doing this? So I just wanted to make sure I mention that, so when we get to it, we'll know what I'm talking about. Selection criteria. One of the top things on here is located in a zoning district permitted by right. Recently, just ordinance which allows residential out commercial zoning, and obviously residential is allowed
James,
outright.
you're breaking up a lot, at least on my end. Is he breaking up for others?
I don't know what's going on. I'm sorry.
We can hear you right now, so that's good.
Okay.
We'll keep trying.
And you might want to turn off your video temporarily. That might help.
Okay, I'll do that. Thank you. So as I mentioned, did you hear the comment about by right zoning? I'll go over that real quickly. That we do have residential areas, and we do allow residential outright in commercial areas. So one of the biggest impasses, or at least hurdles in getting through the development process, is the entitlement. So if you've got a project that has defined an area that already allows what they want to build, they're already ready to build. So that's, if they don't have to do a conditional use permit or go through a whole long design review process, that could save them anywhere from 4 to 6 months just in process, which is time and money. So those type of projects would have a priority. Then also significant increases in affordable housing for large families, extremely low income, that targets extremely low income, and then green building techniques. When we talk about affordable housing, it's critical that the long-term operational costs are low. For people to live in a place that they can afford, but they can't afford utilities, or there's issues with maintenance, that it's critical that things are built well. And Title 24 and the Green Building Code takes care of most of that, but there's ways that they can do a better job. Increase affordable housing opportunities for special needs populations. As Brokaw mentioned, some other ones that maybe really fit within the character of Santa Paula that I think are important. And then also located in areas currently underserved by affordable housing developments, which really hits most of our city. We've got a very small community. And when we did our windshield survey in 2016, we identified that much every neighborhood in Santa Paula had need for their housing rehabilitation, or at least more opportunities for affordable housing. So from the standpoint of fiscal impacts, housing in lieu trust funds will be utilized based on the application in demand and in accordance with municipal code. As I mentioned, the one element that we need to add is kind of that underwriter, someone to be able to look at the applications and ensure that they meet the financial muster. And that would be, like the public benefit housing, would be included within that grant program. The grant in itself would be either the applicant would pay that, or it would be paid out of the grant. It's would be their option in that. And then personnel impact staff is responsible for the coordination of the application and review of the funds. I wanted to pull up, if I can do this real, pull up the wanted to pull up the, there we go, pull up the evaluation criteria. Is that clear for everyone? Are you able to see that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good. So really at this point, I'm open, I'd like to open to questions, but I wanted to put this up specifically if there are questions about this too. So it's easier to have it ready, switching around between screens.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Mason, for that presentation. Council, questions, comments?
Yeah, well, I have a one on the other part, but on this one specifically, I think it'd be useful to have a line for a car charging port for electric vehicles.
Okay. I need to check that with Title 24. I think we're getting to a point where that's a requirement. I'll confirm that. Right, we just shifted last year where solar, before 2019, I'm sorry, before 2020, it was solar was, houses had to be solar ready. Now they have to, everything that's built has to have solar on it.
Right.
And I believe charging is required too.
Right, I believe that's the case. I just want to make sure.
Would that potentially go in with the green building techniques, or is that something else entirely different?
State requirement now, but it definitely, I guess it's a box they have to check anyway. So I think you want to give them credit for things that are outside that box.
Yeah, but green building is a kind of a different thing. It's talking about the materials used, how construction happens, how waste happens. So it's a whole bunch of other criteria independent of energy.
Councilmember Sabal, did you have a question about the previous page you said?
Yeah, well,
hold on. If you're going to go to the previous page, can we finish up on this first so we're not flipping back and forth?
Sure, go ahead, Vice Mayor Crosswhite.
If that's okay, Councilmember Sabal.
Oh yeah, that makes good sense.
Okay, yeah. I just had a quick at the bottom, I think it is, of that page. It talks about being realistic rent, and I was wondering if we needed to define realistic. No, on the bottom of the first page, I believe.
I'm sorry.
Oh, or right. I think it was here.
Yeah, 6. Oh.
I don't know. Let me pull up my packet and then I can tell you where it is.
It's the first item after on line item 6.
Okay.
Wait. No, wait a minute.
Yeah. In section 6, the second item.
Second item, sorry.
Here we go. Proposed rents are realistic.
Yeah. So I just didn't know if we needed to define what realistic meant or not. It seemed vague, but maybe that's something that's a criteria that the committee develops.
It could be yeah, I think rents that are that relate to the market and the community. I mean, it's always changing, but I think I understand what the intent is. But
I was going to suggest using market rather than realistic, because, or in a reasonable range of market, maybe something that refers to that, maybe.
Isn't 6 to ensure that the developer
can make it work?
So it's.
Oh, so it's not referring to.
It has nothing to do with the jurisdiction of what he's going to charge. It's to him qualify to get the loan. So he can't come in and say it's going to cost me, $200,000 to build it, and I can get $4,000 for a 2-bedroom.
Okay.
This is anticipated cash flows of a developer that has to prove he's going to make it.
Okay. And then
it's a criteria that the housing
I got you.
Use to qualify him. Has nothing to do with what he has to pay, what he has to charge. I mean,
that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So back up on the target population, I was wondering if you could respond because the speaker had mentioned farm workers and female head of household, and I can't remember if there was a third category that I'm missing. I see that we already have large families on there.
Yeah,
but
those were the other two, was the female head of household and large families in addition, which is already exists, and then farm workers. Those are the three.
And so I wonder if you saw a way that those could be incorporated into the target populations.
I would recommend that it would be, just because it reflects our community.
James, a question on that, why you're giving 10 points for 3 and 4 bedrooms. I mean, in discussing with, and maybe one of the people that are in here, in my investigation, the 2 bedrooms are more in line with the bulk of the community. 3 and 4 bedrooms tend to, when we do inspection, tend to have multiple families moving in and putting a burden on the apartment, the house, because they don't have the adequate bathrooms. And in this day and age, they have to double up in order to make the payment. Could you give eligible points for 2 bedrooms? I mean, because 2, and this is in discussion with housing authority, where they have their problems is the 3 and 4 bedrooms that they have to keep inspecting because multiple families are moving into there.
Gotcha. Yeah, I talk to people that are in 2 bedrooms that have 8 people. But
yeah, well, that's the problem.
Yeah, so you have 4 bedrooms. You have
now you have 12 people, 14 people.
Yeah. Well, one thing I kind of mulled around in this, and that's what's available as far as efficiency units within Ventura County, let alone Santa Paula. How many seniors and how many single adults or new families that would love to be able to have a 500 square foot place, because that's kind of a lot of space if you're out a lot, and the cost per square foot lowers rent. When you're in a 2-bedroom unit, it's $2,500. So you take that down, even if it's not 500, if it's 700 or 800. But maybe there's my thought was I vacillated between this and trying to encourage what a smaller unit maybe. But that's one of those things. I need metrics and understanding.
The criteria, instead of making it 2-bedroom, maybe the criteria should be square footage per bedroom.
Yeah.
Because I can build a 4-bedroom in 900 square feet, or I can build a 2-bedroom in 900 square feet. It's much better to have a 2-bedroom in 900 square feet than 4 bedrooms where you're cramming them all in there. You're gonna make the developer he's not gonna build any more space. He's just gonna make the rooms much smaller. He'll make them, 8 by 8 instead of making them 10 by 11.
This was the challenge that I had, is what is in the market right now. What are developers wanting to build?
I've been in the housing authority before this for 30 years. And as a person who's now developing apartments, those are the questions that we're looking at.
Got it.
And I can tell you that the demand in Santa Paula is 2 bedrooms. That's what it is.
Well, we have to be a little careful here, because part of the goal is to make a house, let's say a 4-bedroom house, for a family that might need it, affordable. So the whole point is not to have multi-families in there. The point is that a single large family can afford to live there. So I think both points are true. So
right, and that's why I said try and make it square footage criteria, not bedroom criteria, I guess.
And one thing that does help as a whole, we're talking about their pro forma, and one of the biggest thing is management experience. And it's not just building something, but it's being able to maintain it and manage the population that are in these units.
Yeah, and you're trying to build a quality home. I mean, a quality apartment, whether it's a quality home or a quality apartment. I mean, I can tell you some nightmare 4 bedrooms that I've seen, and some really nice 2 bedrooms. I mean, I don't know. We're encouraging 3 and 4 bedrooms. I'm not sure. I think, well.
But if you only have, I mean, just.
You have to put something. So, okay, that's fine.
Well, and I guess I would argue if we're trying, I realize that what could happen, but if you're trying to make something that's affordable, that's nice for a larger family, it would be preferable that you didn't automatically have all 5 kids sleeping in 1 bedroom, which is what happens if you only have 2. So I think at least having a 3, even if you split it out and have 5 points for 3 and 4 bedrooms and have 5 points for a farm worker and female head of household, I mean, that would be another, I don't know how that, if that's would make sense in order to get those other 2 things in there. But I don't know if I want to take out the potential for kids to be able to have a little bit of space.
Right, and the other thing is there's less probability that the large houses will be built because the price point for developers is lower, right? Their chance of making money is lessened by the larger house. So there might not be a lot of people going in and getting the full 10 points there. So they don't get the maximum points on everything. So they may only get 5 points there, but pick it up somewhere else. So I think it's a nice incentive because I think those will be few and far between.
Do you get all 10 or you get 0? Is that what it is, James?
No, it's a rating. It's maximum within each area. So if you've got in that level 1, you've got 25, you could get 12. But also keep in mind to be able to have it, the way this is set up, to be able to have your application reviewed, you need to have 75 points. Then the review process comes in. And that's, with staff, community members, financial housing people to be able to look at it and go, okay, does this pro forma make sense? And does it match what we need in Santa Paula?
Yeah.
So just because you have high points doesn't automatically mean you're it. It's going to be competitive.
We're gonna critique this, but on that affordability and target population, to me, number 3, where you're only giving 5 points, seems to be most important than really the size. To me, I think we want to target, and that was with the public comment was also farm. So I think you should get more points if you're targeting a specific area than the size of the building.
Well, I'm not sure if you can target specifically, can you?
No, you're giving them more points. Let's say you give them 10 there instead of 5.
Right, I'm just not sure you can make something specific for.
Well, yeah, you're making it a part of the application process.
It already is.
It already is.
Yeah, it's only 5 points, and don't we want to have more for special needs, farm labor, homelessness, and persons with disability?
I would agree with that.
And if I can jump in here for a second, I also agree that number 3 just seems a little odd because you classify folks that are living in somebody's couch surfing or in a garage as homeless, even though they're in a house. And if they're on the street and homeless, they have even more dire circumstance to try to get in. It really is kind of interesting that it is such a low rating. Personally, I think that should be higher because you are trying to help people that are with disabilities and families that are homeless.
Yeah, I just think that it should be a little bit higher.
Might swap them.
That's just my thought.
5 for the 1 and 10 below if we're trying to reach the special
target
needs
population. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so then if we did that, would we add the female heads of household and farm workers into that? And so then that would be worth 10 and the other would be worth 5.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And could we include and not make it as gender specific and just say single parent homes?
Yeah.
So, because both. Sometimes it happens one way or the other.
Yeah. Okay.
But I do like that emphasis to swap those as far as who we're trying to help.
Any more comments on this application process before we go back to the other pages? Okay, Andy, I think you had a follow-up question.
It's a comment actually, and it kind of was my own feeling from years of experience in working and stuff like this, and then to acknowledge one of the public comments on item 10. But the in lieu fees, without fail across the country are generally so low that developers pay them almost 100% of the time. So in terms of a goal is you don't want to be shuffling off, and dividing your community where you're building all your affordable housing in one part of town and then building your market rate housing somewhere else and separating those two communities. So, and that's almost all the time, almost always what happens. So in San Diego, I worked on some stuff where you're trying to do a tall, condo tower where you're trying to split up. So that gets a little bit different. It's a little bit more challenging, but some, we were applied enough pressure where they did build some affordable units there. But in a place like, we have two now. So Harvest was one. And in a place where you have multi-acreage, it's, to me, much easier to build housing. So instead of if we didn't have had these in lieu fees, then the rental housing and the apartments we were talking about, and maybe condos even, would have not been paid off. They would have been built. So I hope we have this conversation in the future about in lieu fees, period. And if we ever have another large development where we decide that maybe we don't want in lieu fees and we want to just require the building of the affordable units on site.
Well, one thing I can mention as far as that goes, what I'm seeing a shift in California of, I don't know that we'll have how many more projects we'll have that'll have 10 or more units based on our code, but I'm seeing the shift to where it's the differential between what a market rate house is and what an affordable house is. And, there's some communities where it's $150,000, $175,000, and which is realistically that difference. So that's, if you're going to build 10 units, then one of them has to be, if you're going to pay the in lieu fee, you need to pay that difference or you need to build it.
Right. But even at 175, well, that helps you leverage more money, but that still doesn't build another house, one, and two, it builds it somewhere else. Yeah. Right. So again, across the state, people are having the conversation about just not getting rid of them altogether as well. So, but it's a good conversation to have.
Any more questions for staff?
Mr. Mayor.
Russwhite.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know if it's for staff or if it's for, first one for staff and then one for us. The one for staff is, can you speak to the difference between the Inclusionary Housing Trust Fund and the Affordable Housing Trust Fund to address the earlier's question?
Yeah. What that is the interchangeable use of in lieu fees and affordable housing trust. That should say Affordable Housing Trust Fund. It was stated so many times within that staff report in so many different ways. I think one thing that would be helpful is if we coin it and shape it and call it one thing and not get it too confused moving forward.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. I thought that was the case, but I just thought it would be good for us to make sure that was the case. The other thing that I had wondered about, first, when it talked about the community member, I'm now wondering after the speaker's comment whether there should be two community members. And so that's one question for us to talk about. And then the other piece of that was whether there should be some criteria. I'm thinking that might be better if it said, if there'd only been one, I was going to say someone with finance experience, and then clarify that they shouldn't be affiliated directly with any one housing builder, either on the board or an employee, so that there's not an appearance of bias if that project ended up getting picked. And so then if we had a second member, whether we would want that to apply to both. But that was my comment on the community member piece to throw out for conversation.
Council members?
We couldn't hear you, Leslie. Your audio cut out.
Sorry, I was just saying I'm thinking. I'm kind of inclined to go with the staff's with that clarification that you've made about make sure that there's no bias on the committee, but I'm inclined to leave the recommendation as is for the number of people. So I think that we would still get large community input on any development that we have. That's going to come anyway. But I think as far as the deciding board, yeah, sometimes you get too big and it makes it harder rather than easier. So that's just more of a kind of a process, kind of a thing that I feel.
And then also, it depends vastly on kind of the city and the government culture and what they feel like doing. So a lot of places don't want to do any of this. And so all this language would matter a lot, and it still may take years and years for something to come through. But I feel that we have both the population in need and then a population in general is friendly to this concept, and a city government who really wants to push through on this. So to me, that is encouraging. So, if everything's not perfectly defined, at least the spirit is there, and I feel confident that we can pull it off.
So are you in favor of 1 or 2 community members? That was the question.
2.
Other comments from other council members? Anything to add there, Councilmember Riza?
No, I mean 1 or 2. You don't want to be too many, but adding 1 more is not too bad.
I wouldn't argue with that either.
I think my concern was if one of them couldn't be there that day, then at least you'd make sure that there was 1 community member there for sure. It kind of gives you an alternate. I mean, that way if they can both be there, great. But then if, just so that there's at a minimum, you end up with 1, if for some reason someone couldn't be there. So that was part of what I was thinking.
It's not a big arguing point on my part. I'd go either way too. That would be fine too. Whatever the pleasure of the board or the council.
Yeah, and I feel the same way.
I do too. I mean, I like your thought process, Vice Mayor, about 2 people, because in this day and age you miss out on additional comments or concerns, and especially if one is absent. And I also agree with your and also James Mason's trying to make all the language consistent so there's no confusion. I mean, that's really again, it's just a matter of sitting down doing it, but it does need to be clarified. So, but I could go either way. But yeah, it does sound like 2 might be maybe a good suggestion.
Well, one thing, Mayor, Council, that Vice Mayor Crosswhite mentioned, and that's maybe refining what the criteria is for those 2 members. I mean, if you're going to have people that serve, it would be helpful for them to have some affiliation or some background or some familiarity with what the issues are, just to be able to help. And we've got a lot of people in the community that have that ability, so that's one good thing.
Yeah.
And if I could put in a plug for a diversity of opinion as well, too, that's helpful. Or not helpful sometimes, but regardless, it's good to have people from different walks of life chiming in.
So I know the recommendation is that we give enough feedback to staff, but I don't know if we convoluted it by trying to add an extra person and language and, the comments we made about the application page. But is that enough staff to move forward?
those were clear directions.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Crotty, I don't think we need a vote. It's just, it seems to be a consensus.
That's correct. You don't need to vote. The item was directed to staff, and I think you've provided it.
Very good. Anything else from council?
I just want to make a comment. I'm excited to see this come back before us. It's been a long time coming, and so I'm thankful to staff for your work on it.
Thank you.
I too wanted to thank staff, and on a night when we're talking about all of the different variety of types of homes that we have to offer in our city, I'm very excited about that. You know, no one can come after a city that is taking care of those that are on the higher end, and you know, city employees and two income families, as well as taking care of our low income. And so I find that as very well-rounded opportunity for our city. And I'm very excited that they all came to us this evening. And I don't think it was by design, but I really like the balance that I'm seeing for all of this, that we take care of everybody.
Yeah, on the SCAG meetings on RENA, there was just some really awful city council people chiming in, completely contrary to the conversation we're having right now. So thank you, Councilmember Cornejo. Yeah, this is just a whole different world of possibility and inclusion here. So.
Okay, well, thank you very much to staff for that presentation, and also a big thank you to the speakers this evening and the public comments. Your concerns and words matter, and as you know, they were taken and utilized in our discussion tonight. So thank you. And we're going on to action item number 11, where we will revisit some of the comments again. So let's move on to action item number 11. And Madam Clerk, I believe we have some public comment.
Yes, Mayor, we do. We have two public speakers that are here this evening online. We have Ellen Brokaw and Linda Braunschweiger.
Very good. If we could just inquire from Ms. Brokaw if her comment is similar to the first, or is it different?
Well, this comment is specifically about the Housing Trust Fund request. So
very good. Then Ms. Brokaw, if you would go ahead and begin. Thank you.
I just wanted to speak very briefly to express my strong support for this request. The Housing Trust Fund of Ventura County has a track record of leveraging funds and using them to support housing projects for our most vulnerable residents. Santa Paula has benefited from their loans, and I urge you to vote tonight to join other Ventura County cities with approval of this award. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brokaw. And Madam Clerk, do we have Linda Braunschweiger available?
Yes, she is available, and she just turned her speaker on. Thank you.
Very good. Welcome.
Hi, thank you so much, Mayor, City Council members, and staff. I appreciate the opportunity to make a couple of comments before staff makes a presentation. I'm the CEO for the Housing Trust Fund Ventura County, as well as the CEO for the newly created Housing Land Trust of Ventura County, which is a supporting nonprofit under the Housing Trust Fund. First, I wanted to clarify a little bit about the two different types of housing trust funds, that models that we see out there. One is the government format that you guys have been talking about this evening. It was set up by the city to use in lieu fees to help fund affordable housing. The second model is a nonprofit model, like the Housing Trust Fund Ventura County. And one of the advantages of our model is that we're able to leverage public, private, and charitable money into this revolving loan fund. Also, our Housing Trust Fund is now considered a regional housing trust fund because all 10 cities and the county are invested in the trust fund, which gives us the opportunity to leverage various state and federal sources of funding that government housing trust funds don't have the opportunity to receive. Just quickly, in the fall of 2018, the voters passed the Veterans and Affordable Housing Act, which included a matching grant program for housing trust funds. The first NOFA was issued last summer for a maximum of $5 million per housing trust fund. Excuse me. The housing trust fund was awarded a little over $4 million for this coming year. Each year through 2024, the Housing Trust Fund Ventura County is able to apply for up to $5 million, which would bring potentially $25 million to our fund over this 5 years. It comes directly into an affordable housing development loan that is processed through the Housing Trust Fund. And I wanted to clarify that because in the original Prop 1, we were under the understanding that we had to show 3 years of ongoing revenue sources from our donors. Excuse me. So for this reason, when we originally asked the city to consider donating at the $250,000 level, it was to be spread over 5 years. But HCD has clarified their regulations, and we no longer need to meet that requirement in this format. And so we're asking if you would reconsider doing this as a one-time lump sum of $250,000 or front-loading the investment instead of over 5 years, because we want to make sure and guarantee that we can match all of those funds with the Prop 1 match. And lastly, one of the values of the Housing Trust Fund model is this leveraging ability. And as mentioned in the staff report, we are able to leverage funding from financial institutions, corporations, and foundations. And we're seeing the confidence in our investors growing as they're increasing the sizes of their investments, including a number of the cities throughout Ventura, excuse me, throughout Ventura County. Last year, we saw Pacific Western Bank and City National Bank increase their investments from $500,000 to $1 million, each of them. And we also saw the McCune Foundation increase their investment from $150,000 to $250,000. And we've seen a number of our cities throughout this county invest 2 and 3 times into our fund. So it's exciting times for us, but it's an opportunity that will benefit Santa Paula, as we have in the past. Your original $50,000 investment brought over $800,000 in loans just to Santa Paula. But I am here after the presentation by staff. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much for your public comment. And when our staff gives a presentation, we'll see if he can address some of the questions you had. We have also 2 more public comments, Madam Clerk.
Yes, Mayor. We have Kate English on item number 11. I support the allocation of, excuse me, of in lieu fees to the Housing Trust Fund, Ventura County. Thank you for hearing my comments. And we also have Marianne Krause in her item number 11 is as a founding and current board member of Housing Trust Fund Ventura County, HTFVC, I support the recommendation that the city invest $250,000 of in lieu fees in the Housing Trust Fund. In 2012, the city pledged $50,000 in accumulated in lieu fees payable over several years. That early money, that early money to the trust fund allowed it to leverage other funds and make 3 loans totaling $850,000 to the Santa Paula Housing Authority. Additionally, because the $50,000 in funds were pledged during a time when the state matched local funds with state bond money, the trust fund was able to bring in additional $50,000 in affordable housing funds to Ventura County and add them to the trust fund's revolving loan fund. The state is once again matching local funds, albeit with somewhat narrower limitations, including the requirement that funds be in our accounts in order to be matched. A pledge or commitment is not sufficient. Whatever portion of the proposed $250,000 is received during the match period will effectively be doubled by bond funds from the state, helping the the revolving loan fund to grow and help build even more homes. Santa Paula was one of the earliest municipalities to join the trust fund. The trust fund now includes the county of Ventura and all 10 cities as contributing members, unique in California. A majority of our contributing agencies have now made a second major contribution or are in the process of doing so. Your timely investment will benefit new affordable housing projects in Santa Paula and throughout the Ventura County during this time of extreme housing crisis and well into the future. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. And that was the end of the comments we have, Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We have a presentation now from Dan Singer, City Manager, and Jamie Mason, Community Economic Development Director.
Well, there's no reason not to continue to highlight James. Hopefully he hasn't decided to call it a night. Mr. Mason?
He's on, but his microphone and his camera are off.
Well, I can certainly jump in until he moves forward. Linda pretty well summarized what the request is tonight. And I think it's helpful to point out that as this request came to us originally back in 2019, it actually spurred some of the discussion and the study session that the council had. This was before Leslie was put on the council, to have a broader discussion about housing in lieu fees and how they get used. So it looks like James is ready to take that away. And, you know, coincidentally enough, you've just given some direction on that program, but it really relates to the production of housing as opposed to these types of loans. So we felt this was worthy of taking on its own merits to you. So, James, are you there?
I am here. Yes. So as I've continued to mention, you know, our ability to be flexible and understand that we have diversity within our population as far as the needs and diversity in what the solutions are to fulfill those needs. So being able to use the Housing Trust Fund, our Housing Trust Fund from in lieu fees, to be able to assist the Housing Trust Fund of Ventura County. The things that Linda Braunschweiger mentioned as far as the amount of agencies that they're able to leverage, the amount of banks that they're able to work with, and the amount of actually end users, developers that are utilizing their funds to build things is a great confluence to be able to provide assistance to them. There we go. So the recommendation for this item is that City Council approve the allocation of housing in lieu fees from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund to the Housing Trust Fund of Ventura County in an amount not to exceed $250,000 to be dispersed over the next 5 years, with caveat the request that the Housing Trust Fund has mentioned as far as the new state requirements, and also direct the city manager to award the funds to the Housing Trust Fund, from the Housing Trust Fund to the Housing Trust Fund of Ventura County. You saw this before, the acceptable use of the in lieu fees that go into the Affordable Housing Trust, and to provide affordable housing for reasonable costs associated with the development of affordable housing, just to show that consistency. Linda Braunschweiger went through a couple of these things. They're a 501c3 community development financial institution. They support diversity of housing and, you know, really fits some of the projects that fit the needs of our community. And they leverage, as I mentioned earlier, in funds from investors that donate for affordable housing. So they're a clearinghouse for a lot of things that are happening within the county as far as affordable housing. So as mentioned again, Santa Paula's prior investment of $50,000 paid into a $4 million loan pool. And Linda mentioned that that came out to $150,000 of investment in Santa Paula, but they leveraged over $7 million in development funding for 25 units of senior housing in Santa Paula. So when you take $50,000 and you start, adding things to it, and what they're able to do through their network has brought back a lot to Santa Paula. So I'm really excited to think about what $250,000 could provide, to our community. So the request is based on the leverage that they're trying to get from Prop 1 and a one-to-one matching campaign. And that request of $250,000, again, at council's discretion, to either front load or provide that all at once per their request, or over the next 5 years, and then use the funds would be consistent, as I mentioned, with our municipal code and what the use of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund is defined for. Housing in lieu funds from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund will be utilized based on application demand in accordance with municipal code and criteria outlined by the administrative program. So basically, we would provide these funds, and it's for them to be able to use. We don't have any real fiscal impact other than what would be taken out of our housing in lieu Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and no personnel impacts. And that is a staff recommendation. Open to questions, and that's it.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mason. Council, questions, discussion?
My question actually would be more possibly for Christy or City Manager Singer as to, first I will say that I'm in favor of participating, but my question would be a budget question as far as front loading or not. I know we probably don't have to decide that now, but it may be part of our budget processing processes that's coming up. But I would just like maybe the first opinion or from City Manager Singer, maybe, or Christy.
I'll speak on this. I don't see an issue with front loading the costs or the disbursement, because that fund has more than enough, and it's not being utilized for any other purpose. So there's not a holdup of the funds.
In addition, I would just point out that we anticipate the monies to continue to come in on a fairly regular basis now over these next 5 to 7 years, given all the development at Harvest.
So then my question would be, if we do the recommendation, would it be the funding be at the discretion of management then as you see fit, or would we as a council decide the schedule for that?
It could be up to the council's direction. It would be best if it was tonight. If you felt more comfortable, for example, doing, 2 payments of $125,000, or starting out with 100, and, whatever formula you would like, at a minimum, the trust fund is asking for $50,000 a year, but their preference would be the more they can accumulate sooner, the better. We have over $1 million in the fund right now, with more coming in every month.
Yeah,
that was a question I was going to see how much we had in there. And Linda, I guess her first was over a 5-year period, but now she realized it needs to be in the fund. So from being a benefit at the Housing Authority of that first loan way back, and actually sitting in on a couple of the board meetings with Linda, it's a good way to leverage. I mean, I think we started our first development project, one of the first, and then it was a multi-layer situation where we developed with the use of the Housing Trust Fund and other agencies that work together. And I think the Housing Trust Fund has shown a great track record over the Ventura County and different agencies that they've worked with all over the county. So I see no problem with it.
Other questions or comments from council?
If I could ask a quick question of Linda, just a curiosity question. You mentioned you're both a housing trust and a land trust organization. If you could share what the land trust portion of that looks like.
Certainly, the land trust is an affordable housing land trust. So land donated to the land trust, whether it be from a municipality or a private individual, is for the purpose of affordable housing. So we will be doing requests for proposals from developers when we receive a piece of land. And then that proposal would work in partnership with whatever city the land is donated in to ensure that there is affordable housing in perpetuity. So the land, the developers building on the land will have a 99-year lease. So the benefit to a municipality is that it's guaranteed public purpose of affordable housing.
And how many cities in the county or the county itself have taken advantage of that?
Well, we just incorporated at the end of last year, and we're doing our first project now that's going to the Oxnard City Council the end of this month, which will be the first, hopefully, piece of land donated. And then we have conversations going in a variety of cities about potential land donation.
Great,
but Oxnard will be the first. It is a project that is a homeless shelter with 55 extremely low income and low income rental units, if it gets approved.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
If I could add one more point just for full transparency in terms of fiscal impact, the only fiscal impact that I would note is the loss of interest revenue from not having that $250,000 in our funds. But again, that's minimal in comparison.
Thank you, Chrissy. That's definitely a good concern. And the only other question I would have is, if we did front load, is there any other entity that is possibly out there wanting some of those funds that might have to wait? Or
as the city manager mentioned, the fund is currently has a balance of $1,082,000. But I wouldn't be able to speak on the familiarity of other agencies that are interested.
We do know that there's interest by other entities, including the fact that People Self-Help and Habitat for Humanity both have approved projects that are going through, plan review, and they will probably be asking for funds. You could also feasibly end up adding to the public benefit housing program, although clearly we want to first see if there's demand for that, and that'll take some months. I think there could be some downside to writing the entire check now, but keep in mind that for every 100 homes that are being built, we're getting almost another $500,000. So, and we've seen 250 homes built in the last 12 months, 240. So that it is moving pretty quickly.
well, it's certainly nice to have options, and I think we have some options. We just council's direction and what your thoughts are.
They also say a bird in the hand's worth two in the bush, right? So getting that money out there and having the Housing Trust Fund supporting People Self-Help and, Habitat and projects like that are another means of accelerating some of these opportunities.
So it sounded like we had at least three options, obviously, the, increments of 5 years, 50,000 or over 5 years, or the front load it, and then there was also a suggestion of maybe half and half. So obviously there's options. So
I think, Mayor,
of course,
I think I've gone back and forth between half and half. I think 5 years at this point, given what what Linda has said, is probably not what I would lean towards. I think my inclination would be to go ahead and do it up front, because it is true that those Habitat or People Self-Help will probably be going to them for funds anyway. And that way they could get the match sooner. If the majority of the council couldn't live with upfronting it, then I could live with doing like 150 and 100. But I think my inclination would be to go ahead and fund it so that we can make sure that that gets matched.
Would it help your decision to hear what that interest might be if we held on to that? I know that Christy Ramirez mentioned there is some interest. But.
I don't know that, while I'm normally concerned about that, in this case, I don't think that I am because of the leveraging, and we're going to be getting money coming in on a regular basis from Harvest anyway.
I agree. Let's just do it up front. I mean, if there was a project coming in, any project even starting today is not going to be ready in a year. It takes time to develop a project. We're going to have another $1 million by then, and let's just pay it and move on.
Well, that sounds like the beginning of a motion, Councilmember Riza. You want to go ahead and continue?
Sure. I'll make a motion to, approve the housing lieu fees from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund to Housing Trust Fund of Ventura County, amount of $250,000 to be distributed within the next one lump payment.
I second that. I will second that with a comment. I've been thinking that it seems to me we have a city that's ready to take it and to assist, and with the right attitude to take advantage. That may mean that the developers will be happy to work with us, where there may be some reticence in other cities that are not so willing to work on these projects. So it may really happen more quickly if we enable that. So I would agree with the same with the lump sum. So for that reason, I am seconding.
Thank you. So it's been moved by Councilmember Rice and seconded by Councilmember Cornejo. Mr. Crotty, do we have to include number 2, or is that a second? Can we include number 2, or is that a second item?
You can include that and make that one motion, or you can do it separately. It's your council's pleasure.
Then I'd add direct the city manager to award the Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
Second for the same.
Very good. So it's been moved and seconded to the staff's recommendation for items 1 and 2. Any more discussion? Madam Clerk, will you roll call, please?
Yes. Councilmember Ariza?
Yes.
Councilmember Sabel?
Yes.
Councilmember Corneo?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Crosswhite?
Yes.
Mayor Juarez?
Yes.
All yes. Thank you.
All right. And again, thank you to all the speakers that spoke this evening or submitted public comment. The fact that they were read caused some more discussion. And Linda Braunschweiger, thank you for your input as well. Okay, so we're done with action item number 11. Let's go ahead and go to action item number 12, decertification as a community choice aggregator, Dan Singer and Jonathan Royas.
Yes, you're also done with Mr. Mason, but I do want to thank him. He had a lot of heavy lifting to bring all of these to you at the same time. And I will just also say that the subcommittee of your 2 council members and planning commissioners really were instrumental in helping us deliver these programs. There was a lot of back and forth. It's been like a year of massaging this. So thank you for the direction tonight and the support. Mr. Royas, you want to talk about community choice aggregation?
All right, sounds good. I'm looking at my watch, so we'll get you guys out of here. Well, thank you, Mr. Singer. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, and members of the public. Staff comes before you this evening with a recommendation to move forward with steps to effectuate a decertification of the City of Santa Paula's Community Choice Aggregation Program, or CCA, as I'm going to refer to it this evening. To give council a brief background on how we got here today, in April of 2018, the City Council adopted an ordinance authorizing implementation of the CCA program through the California Choice Energy Authority. or CalChoice as they're referred to. To help provide some context, a CCA is a nonprofit public entity formed by local communities working together to supply the electricity needs of their residents. With that being said, Council moved forward in 2018 and awarded a contract to CalChoice to develop an implementation plan with the intention of us starting our own CCA to provide energy services to our residents. Our implementation plan was approved, and we had plans to begin energy service in May of 2020. Now, part of our plan incorporated language that states the city at any time may consider other options based on market conditions, regulatory considerations, as well as other factors that would potentially affect the city and moving forward with the CCA. So in April of 2019 and in April of 2020, staff determined it was prudent at that time to postpone a launch of a CCA until 2022, with a registration deadline by the end of this month. With this deadline fast approaching, staff has revisited this plan and taken into consideration whether or not this would be a viable solution at this time. Based in conversations with CalChoice and based in looking at the future market conditions and regulatory other factors that could affect the city, obviously, as we all know, these past 18 months have been very difficult to say the least. And concerns have been raised in the market relating to COVID, energy conditions, and market conditions that have really caused us to reevaluate whether we should move forward or not. In recent conversation with CalChoice, and in taking into account these current market conditions, a CCA program launch at this time would not be an economically viable option, as it could cause resident and commercial energy rates in town to increase for residents, which would be much higher than they're currently established through Southern California Edison. Staff also explored the feasibility of partnering with neighboring communities in an effort to form a larger CCA, which in theory would lower our costs. However, again, the inability to garner more partners, and in addition to the current market rates at this time, make this option unfeasible. As such, staff is coming before you tonight as the city no longer intends to move forward with the current implementation plan. CalChoice and staff recommend that the city complete the decertification process in lieu of registering as a CCA so that we can meet the regulatory compliances before the end of the month. Thank you for your time, and I would be happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Royas. Council, questions, comments?
I have a question. Does this preclude us from trying to do it again in the future if things look different?
Council member, that's a good question. No, it does not preclude us from moving forward in the future.
Thank you.
Other council members?
I'll just make a comment. This part of the reason why this got delayed was that from the first time a survey came back, it came back that it was probably not going to be financially viable for us to go on our own. So we paused it to see if we could get partners, and then we weren't really able to get partners, which leaves us back at it, even before the current market conditions and COVID and everything else that's happened in the last year and a half. Initially, the first study came back saying that it was probably not going to be something that was financially viable. So I just wanted to add that to the conversation, because since you all don't have the benefit of the multiple pages of financial spreadsheets that we saw when it came the first time, well, not the very first time, but when the first study came back and we went, oh, that doesn't look as good as it had when we initially started down that process.
Thank you. Other council members, comments or questions? The only question that I would have is, are we in any obligation or legal obligation or peril if we continue with this, or if we abandon from it?
Mr. Mayor, so no, at this time we would not be. If we decertify, There would be no liability to the city. We would partner with CalChoice, who will put together the plan for removing us from the decertification process, and that would be the end of it. And then to the earlier question from council member, if at the time, based on conversations with CalChoice, it seems like based on current market conditions, this would be something that we might want to look into again within maybe about 10 years time.
Very good. Okay, so if there's no more questions or comments, I would certainly entertain a motion on this action item number 12.
I'll move to authorize staff to move forward with steps to effectuate decertification of the City of Santa Paula's Community Choice Aggregate Program.
Second.
Okay, moved by Councilmember Sobel and seconded by Councilmember Ariza. Any more discussion? Okay, seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you please do a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Sabel,
Yes.
Councilmember Cornell,
Yes.
Councilmember Ariza,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Crosswhite,
Yes.
Mayor Juarez,
Yes.
all yes. Thank you.
Thank you. We now move on to agenda item 13, which is future agenda items. Mr. Singer?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You finally get to hear from me. Your quiet winter is getting busier as spring arrives. And so I just wanted to point out a couple of things. One is we'll be, mostly for the public's sake, we'll be convening the council Monday afternoon, March 22nd. That'll be available to view on Zoom from 3 o'clock. I don't think you'll need more than an hour, hour and a half, but that'll be for a more in-depth discussion and review of the draft legislative platform. And then the following week, March 31st, council will convene in an all-day kind of team building and goal setting strategic planning session. That will be held out at the community center in the Cultural Arts building, which is in the back. Public is welcome to attend that. That will not be televised or recorded. So if people want to come to that workshop, they're welcome to. There'll be some refreshments there as well. And then, of course, you've got your regular meetings in April, including that we'll start to have more closed sessions with labor negotiations. We'll then start to have budget workshops coming up in April and May. And then we anticipate probably a special meeting of the council in April to talk about the stimulus package and how we allocate some of that. Other than that, you'll start also having some fuller regular council meetings. So there you have it. Happy to hear from you if you have other things to add.
Council, anything that wanted to add to future agenda items?
Yeah, I do. Coincidentally, after that last item, SCE just started raising their rates. And so I've heard from a variety of community members, and I didn't get a chance to call SCE today, but if I'm understanding correctly, my rates will jump up substantially. So I would like them to come in and talk about the rate increases, and they have a variety of different plans that different members of the community are using, and what are the effects of each of those plans on the household.
Other council members, would you like to see that at a future agenda item?
I would think that would be helpful information for the community and for us. So I've been seeing some information coming through regarding government obligations on the it's not decertification, it's out at San Onofre at Songs, and they're huge obligations, and they're kind of lost at what to do, and that's an overhead issue of theirs. So it would be helpful to hear from them as an organization and how it directly relates to the community rates.
Thank you. And I agree with Councilmember Sobel and Councilmember Cornejo. You know, when we had the increase in the water and sewer rates, people knew it was coming, but now that it's actually gone into effect, it really is impacting people. So it'd be good if SCE does come forward, and if there is going to be increases, so that at least it won't be that much of a surprise. One more thing, Mr. Singer, and that is we did have a special council meeting this afternoon at 4 p.m. It was not on Zoom, but was that recorded for future reference by the public?
I did not record it. I was supposed to, and I did not. I don't think Julie did. I meant to do a Zoom recording of it. Although I've recorded the last 2 study sessions and I've yet to have anyone ask to see it. So I don't know that there's as much interest in those things as we might think, but.
Okay, I'm sure there'll be follow-up meetings from that meeting as well. Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Singer. If there's nothing else, then we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting.
Have a good night, you guys.
Okay, thank you.
See ya.
Happy St. Patty's.